Salutations! Welcome to Pod Mortem. I'm Reneé Hunter Vasquez, joined as always by my co-host, my husband, and my brother.
Hi, I'm John Paul Vasquez.
Hi, I'm Travis Hunter.
This week, we're recording live from the Path of the Eclipse, discussing the 2017 psychological horror film, Gerald's Game. This film was directed by Mike Flanagan, with a screenplay by Flanagan and Jeff Howard based off the 1992 novel of the same name by Stephen King. Gerald's Game finds a way to present the story in a visually striking way while still remaining incredibly faithful to its source material. Peppered with references to other Stephen King works and delicately handling themes of cycles of abuse and childhood trauma, this film was received with mostly positive reviews both at its premiere at BFI South Bank and with its subsequent Netflix release. This film was suggested to us by friends of the show, Megan M. and Allison Regal. We want to thank them so much for their support and for this suggestion. This film was also the winner of our February Patreon poll. So thank you to all of our patrons who participated and voted. If you want to help us pick an episode, join us over on the Patreon at patreon.com/thepodmortem. So, what did you guys think of Gerald's Game the first time you saw it?
I remember watching it together when it came out on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed the movie. It's got some shit in it that's not cool.
Yeah.
But the movie, I will agree with you, as you stated in your opening, that it's a very good way of depicting it on the screen or like telling us the story. It's not a good story, but the story, like,
no, I get what you're saying.
But no, yeah, I did enjoy the shit out of this movie.
No, I definitely agree. I really enjoyed this movie the first time I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
I had never, and I still have not read Gerald's Game,
You gotta.
the novel. I have heard that things that happen in the film are way worse in the novel, and Stephen King, as we know, has a way of description that sometimes borders on unnecessary.
Sometimes it's one might call it too much.
Yeah, I would agree. But I was trying to think of this in the pantheon of Flanagan's works, and I was like, okay, so I think we've already got Absentia, we already have Hush, so I'm already a Flanagan of Flanagan at this point,
Right.
but it's before Hill House,
Yeah.
and so this is kind of the point.
Oculus.
Yes, as well.
Oh yeah.
Yes, which we have covered. I was also thinking that this was kind of the jumping off point for me, where I was like, we absolutely need to be paying attention to Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
Right.
Hush started that for me, and then this was the one, and then after Hill House, it's like, well, I will watch anything.
Yeah. With your name anywhere on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Producer, if you've seen it, I'll watch it.
Right.
But the film is very, very good. It is dark. It is very sad, and it's also at some points like genuinely scary.
Yeah.
Like there were plenty of points that I was like, should I be watching this at 2 a.m? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I made a bad life decision that led me to this point. I was talking to a friend of the show, Amanda, about my love of small cast,
Yeah.
single location kind of horror films, and or just films in general. They kind of speak to me because it's like you're using this minimalist thing to do so much.
Right.
And when most of the film takes place in one room,
Yeah.
you really need to keep your audience's attention. You have to keep it interesting so that you're not bored. That comes with cinematography challenges, all kinds of stuff. But they found a way to make it work so well.
Right.
They always just keep it so interesting.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the people that are on board all making these movies happen like that. Because you're right, if we don't have that opportunity to jump around, go to this place, that place. Oh, we need a research scene. We got to go here. We got to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This movie we don't need any of that. We get all of that happening in this room or throughout the film. Yeah, there is different locations, but very minimum.
barely.
Yeah.
Very minimum.
And with things that are said, like there's so much horror in a lot of the dialogue.
Yes.
Right.
That I'm like, you don't have to say that. I'm already...
Have you tried not saying that?
But I love it. I think the thing about Mike Flanagan for me is that he cares so much about everything that goes into his films.
Right.
Yeah.
And you feel it every time you watch one of Flanagan's films.
Could not agree more. are you guys ready for my hot take?
Oh God.
No, it's not a hot take at all. I love this movie. This was the movie I think that really got me on board where, like you were saying, okay, whatever you have to say, I want to see it. I want to hear it. I read the novel Gerald's Game when I was a teenager, and I would stay up in my bed reading it with my like bedside lamp on and the overhead light off. And so I would convince myself that I was seeing things in the corner of my room because of the way that it's described in the book. I would just stay up late, way too late, scaring the shit out of myself. So I've read Gerald's Game multiple times because of that feeling that it gave me the first time I read it of just, I guess, pure terror. I don't know. I keep going back to it. But then I hear film adaptation, and there are ways, and we can get into it kind of as the film goes along, but there are ways that it's executed in the novel where I'm like, well, how are you going to make that work visually? And the way that Flanagan does it, it's so masterful. The changes that are made are so necessary for, you know, changing the medium from novel to film, because I'm like, oh, it wasn't like that in the book. Like, I just went and saw Knock at the Cabin, and, you know, John Paul's already nodding. I know.
Well, he's doing the opposite of nodding. He was shaking his head.
He nodded first. It's like, actually, she had a red shirt on in the novel, you know, but
Oh, right.
every change was essential and to me appreciated, and the way that he is so thoughtful and takes so much care, because as a, you know, constant reader, there are multiple Stephen King references just throughout,
Right.
that if you don't get it, it doesn't matter, but if you do get it, you're like, wow, thank you, Mike Flanagan, like, I appreciate that. It's one of those, like, I remember you saying when you watched Evil Dead when you were a kid, you were like, wow, they made this for me.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about this. That's how I feel
Okay.
about Gerald's Game. It is very, very sad. It's heartbreaking. It's really disgusting and disturbing. A lot of aspects of it. But as somebody who loved that novel so much and loved it at that stage when you're a teenager where you, like, when you love something, you love it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Getting that in film version and getting it so respectfully done to the source material and all the little Easter eggs. I mean, I'm a pig in shit. I can't like it doesn't get better.
I've heard pigs love it.
God damn.
Can't remember where I heard that. But
I don't know.
But that goes back to, like, even I know a lot of people are complaining about changes they made to The Last of Us, but it's true to the source material, and they've had to change things to make it fit the show. And it's like, okay, you paid attention and you understand the source material. That's why
it's
made
okay.
the change. Yeah, and it's fine.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you reading the book and watching this, you were happy with some of the changes.
Very happy. I was just like, I remember watching it the first time because you hadn't read it.
Yeah.
But I was like, just trust me, like, it's so good, blah, blah, blah. And I was a little, you know, worried because Stephen King adaptations have a tendency to be a little hit or miss. But I couldn't have been more satisfied by what we got.
Well, but it was the same thing that we talked about on Dr. Sleep as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where it seems like Flanagan cares about the material so much that he's going to do it justice.
Oh, yeah.
But he understands what will not work.
Exactly.
That you need to change to make it work for the film.
Mm-hmm.
You clearly love what you're adapting.
Yes.
But you don't love it blindly to the point where it's like, no, but it was like this in the book. So it's the discretion is so expertly used.
Yeah, and I was just talking to Jules about The Dark Tower and why these are the reasons why Flanagan...
He's the only one I want on it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a dream come true.
That's it. I did want to talk about the beginnings of the production because it was kind of interesting to me.
All right.
I listened to the commentary cast. Mike Flanagan came on as a guest and did a full commentary track.
That is so cool.
Like, it was pretty fantastic because they're literally watching the film together and just talking about it. But he talked about the beginning stages of the project, and it turns out he wrote the screenplay for Gerald's Game right after Oculus.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah. And the way that it works with Stephen King, interestingly, is that he has a lot more pull than it seems that he does.
Stephen King?
Yes, because if you say, hey, I want to adapt this, and you give him the screenplay and he hates it, it's not moving forward.
Wow.
So he tried to...
I wonder when that started because some of the adaptations.
I think
no shit. Yeah.
there's been
Steve,
some.
you said yes.
There's been some speed bumps along the way.
Right, that was cocaine Steve.
Yeah,
This is new Steve. now.
Different
we don't
Steve.
talk about that.
No, that time didn't exist. But he gave him the chance with the rights. And so he goes and he shops it around and everybody tells him this is unfilmable.
I get it.
Really?
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me because the way that he wrote it, it's clear that he has intention with everything and a way to make everything work.
Yeah.
But nobody was interested, and so the time lapsed, and so Mike Flanagan lost the rights to Gerald's Game.
Oh man.
What?
Yeah. And so somebody else came in, they were going to make it, and the same exact thing happened to him. But during that time, Mike Flanagan makes Hush. And Stephen King saw Hush, and it reinvigorated his excitement for Flanagan taking on Gerald's Game.
He's like, weren't you supposed to be working on
Yeah.
Gerald? What the fuck happened?
Where's that movie you said? What the fuck?
Nobody's. This isn't my story.
Yeah.
But it's funny because Mike Flanagan worked through his loss of that project with scenes in Hush where you have ideas that we see later in Gerald's Game. The doubles, for example.
Yeah. Oh wow.
That came about because he wasn't able to do it in Gerald's Game, and he thought he was never going to.
Oh, okay.
So that's very interesting to me.
It is.
But after seeing Hush, Stephen King was like, let's try to get that, And so Flanagan goes at it again. People are still not interested, but because of Netflix and his relationship with them, they give him the chance.
All right.
And they trust him creatively.
Thank you, Netflix.
See,
Yeah.
sometimes Netflix is a pain in the
That's
ass,
what I'm
but
saying.
every now and then you do
Netflix
something
has been,
cool.
Netflix has been out of pocket.
Yeah.
50-50 motherfuckers, I swear to God.
Wow. Oh, I like
75,
60-40. Or yeah. So, let's not get crazy.
I was too generous. I'm sorry. But he had said that, I read in NME, he had said that Stephen King, after watching the rough cut of Gerald's Game, he did two things that kind of were fanboy moments for Mike Flanagan. First, he sent him an entire email about everything that he loved about the film.
Yeah.
And Flanagan printed it out and put it on his wall.
Of course. What else do you do with that?
And the second thing that he did was he asked Mike Flanagan, what do you want to do next?
Oh, wow. All right.
I love that story.
Yeah.
That was great.
Well, we're starting off with very happy things because shit's about to
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not going to
take
stay
a
that
turn.
long.
No.
Now, before we cuff this film, we would like to issue a warning for spoilers. Mortem is a very in-depth podcast, and in thoroughly discussing horror films, we have no choice but to spoil a thing or two. If you don't wish to be spoiled, please go watch the film, then come back and enjoy the show. If you've already seen the film or don't care about spoilers, then let's bring it on home. Very quickly, before we get started, I did want to say this is interesting to revisit because I was invited on Chat Cemetery
Yes.
by a friend of the show, Deanna Chapman, a couple years ago at this point, year and a half ago, maybe.
Time is a flat circle.
A time is a flat circle. I have no idea, but it was a very fun conversation, and y'all should check out Chat Cemetery if you haven't. Also, less happy than that.
Yes.
I do want to give a little bit of a warning because I know a lot of people listen to the episodes and they haven't necessarily seen the film. So there's a lot of potentially triggering content in this. A lot of that sexual in nature. So proceed with caution, protect your mental health. And if, you don't want to be on this one, we'll catch you on the next one.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So before the movie even properly begins, over the logo for Intrepid Pictures, Bring It On Home to Me by Sam Cooke plays Submersion.
Yes.
Mhm.
Audio submersion.
Yeah.
That counts, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Does it count because it's Mike Flanagan or does it just count?
It doesn't matter. No, it counts either way.
Okay. We'll do it from now on.
The film opens properly with Jessie Burlingame, played by Carla Gugino, laying out a slip on the bed. We watch as she gets out a suitcase, folds it up, and packs it away as the music continues. She places a sun hat on her head and leaves the room. Her husband, Gerald Burlingame, played by Bruce Greenwood, comes in and places his own overnight bag on the bed. We close in as he packs his clothes in neatly before placing 2 pairs of handcuffs on top. As he zips up his bag, we get the title over it, Gerald's Game.
The timing of that title was pretty great.
It was great, yeah.
And seeing the cuffs, I always love when films show you things that are going to become very important later. Mm-hmm. And that was, there is nothing more important in this film than that pair of handcuffs.
No.
Yeah. The song is great.
It's
at the
so
beginning.
good.
Fantastic.
It's-
And those aren't, I mean, they're standard cuffs, but they're not kink regulation. There's no fuzzy on it.
Yeah,
It's not.
you're right.
So,
Did he rob a precinct?
yeah. Where did he get these? Those are like shackles.
It's like, I'd like to file a police report. Like, wait here. He's like, oh, sweet. Just the opportunity I needed. And then he fucking goes and gets them. I thought the same thing. I was like, what the fuck?
Do you think
Yeah.
they just leave like cuffs at the front desk and like a
What, for
bowl
you to
or
just
something?
take them?
There's a bowl of mints and a bowl.
Let me go get those papers for you, sir. I'm going to leave my cuffs right here.
With the key.
Yeah.
It's courtesy.
It's standard procedure, really.
I will say that this song has become associated with this film for me.
Yeah.
From here on out. I've seen a lot of different properties using it now. Like, it was on Ozark like twice.
I'm very glad because this is stuff I heard when I was a kid. My older brother used to listen to oldies, and I was like, "Oh man, this is great!" And then hearing them, like, and then especially here, I was like, "Oh, this is perfect."
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
the perfect way to open the movie.
And the words also kind of,
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
it's just very well picked.
But the music continues as they travel down the road in their car, and instead of it being played over the film, they're listening to it through the car speakers, which I always think is cool.
Uh-huh.
Like when it's like music for the film, and then it's like, oh, they're listening to the like I don't know.
I always love when they take out the headphones.
Yeah.
It's like, oh. But Jessie turns the radio off, and Gerald asks if she wants to listen to something else instead. She says no, she just wants to take in the scenery. Again, something that means nothing until it means something.
Mm-hmm. I did want to call out the way that the camera's following behind the car. Mm-hmm. The Shining.
Right.
Yeah.
Take a shot.
Gerald slides his hand up her thigh, pushing up her dress, but Jessie takes his hand off of her leg and kisses it. Gerald says that this will be good for them, but Jessie doesn't look so sure. The car continues down the small, lonely road, and inside, Jessie gnaws on her thumbnail as the radio reports the police investigating a break-in and burglary at a local cemetery.
So that little bit on the radio, I did not notice until watching it this time.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's very low on the radio, and if you're not watching with subtitles, you might not hear it at all.
Yeah.
But it's very important.
And I love that it is that subdued, because if it were louder, or if they were like, wait, what? You know what I mean? You're waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Yeah. And everything that happens comes as a surprise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gerald, still behind the wheel, is looking down on his phone when Jessie alerts him to something in the road. He looks up and stops just in time before he hits a dog. It's in the middle of the road eating roadkill. Now, we get, like in the novel, there are chapters like following this dog. He was like once really loved and taken care of, and now he's a stray. And his name used to be Prince. And in this film, he's played by a dog named Roach.
All right?
It's no mushroom, but
No,
you know,
it's not.
who
I mean,
is, right?
You got to name a dog. All right? I mean,
Jessie is sympathetic, saying that the dog is starving, but Gerald honks his horn loudly, scaring the dog to the side of the road. He says that they really need to do something about the strays before continuing down the road. Jessie notes that the dog has a collar and that he might not be a stray. He might belong to someone. But Gerald only advises the dog to get out of the road before it becomes roadkill itself.
so 2 things here. Number 1, he could have driven around the dog. It was fine.
Yeah.
Like the honking
There
was
was
just
room.
There's
Yeah.
there's no one else on the road.
No, it's not a 2 like anything. 2 lane, nothing. And the other thing is the shot of the dog in the rearview mirror. He's like shaking his paw or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Like,
don't come back.
you know,
And don't come bark.
you know, this isn't the last time we're seeing this dog.
Jessie watches out of the back window as the dog looks after the car, becoming smaller and smaller. Gerald tells her that they're not going back for the dog, and Jessie says that she knows. The two share a laugh as they pull up to their destination. They get out of the car at their summer home, and as Gerald goes to get the bags out of the trunk, he's interrupted by a work call. He promises it'll only take 2 minutes, but Jessie assures him that it's okay. She puts on her hat and walks past the house into the backyard overlooking the lake. Serene music plays. Shout out to the Newton brothers for a beautiful score.
Of course.
As she walks through the grass. She stands in front of the water and looks out at the view.
One thing I will say about the score is that it is used so sparingly.
It really is.
Yeah.
And there are massive sections of the film where there is nothing at all. And it's just a very wise decision.
Yeah.
Because if you don't need it, don't use it.
Yeah, and it makes it more powerful when you do use it.
Yeah.
I do want to say that the property is lovely. Flanagan on commentary, he had said that they filmed this in Alabama, and they filmed a lot of his other films in Alabama too. But this was like the last one before they started going to other locations. But he said that I think it was like a 5-minute drive away from the house from Hush from this location. I thought that was awesome.
That's so cool.
And the other thing, I have to call it out because Bruce Greenwood was also on Mad Men. And he said a line that I hated so much. And I think
In Mad Men?
Yeah, I think he's a great actor. But there was a line that he says to Joan when he's talking about her life, and he's calling it, he says, "It's got a hell of a view." And he says it really funny to me. And so whenever Jesse was looking out at the lake, I said, "This place has a hell of a view." And it's just a very esoteric thing that I had
He
to
made
bring
me
up.
so mad in Mad Men.
I hated him.
Whatever, anyway.
Garbage.
Garbage behavior. Inside, Jesse opens the fridge and is happy to see that Gerald had it stocked for them. With a smile, he says it's enough for the whole weekend. He leaves the room and the smile drops from Jesse's face as she sees a wrapped package of meat. She cuts it up. We cut to Jesse sitting on the walkway to the house with the steak on a plate, calling out to the dog that they passed. In the thick woods across the street, there is no movement. Gerald hears her from the bathroom attached to the main bedroom, but stops to pop a little blue pill. Just seeing him do this, the presumption. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And when you think about risk versus reward, like this,
Are you saying like
you have no idea, dude.
If you took it, but like maybe she wants to go see a movie.
Yeah. He's like, oh my god. She's like, you know what? I was thinking of an early dinner. Like, let's get those steaks on the. And he's like,
I made a huge mistake.
Yes, but also fuck him as well. So I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't care how embarrassed he gets.
I just hope he consulted a doctor because that shit's dangerous. Just taking some shit like that.
Well, it looked like a prescription.
Well, but that doesn't mean
He took it out of an envelope.
You can buy prescription from people anytime. I mean,
I guess that's true.
He seems connected.
But he looks at himself in the mirror as he swallows it down with a sip of water. He takes another lingering look at himself before leaving. Outside, the dog whines as it steps cautiously out of the trees. Jesse gets up and they approach each other in the road. She sets down the plate for him, calling him her poor prince, which I really appreciated. And hesitantly, the dog leans down toward the plate. But it's spooked away when Gerald comes up and asks what she's doing. It's like, oh, you're still with that asshole?
You were the guy driving the car. I will say that shows Jesse's kind nature. Mm-hmm. That dog had enough possum to get him through the night. I don't know about a whole steak.
Do you see the marbling on that steak?
Yeah, it looked expensive. Although I think I would have fed the dog.
Well, yeah, but
I just had to make a joke.
She says she was just trying to feed the dog, but Gerald admonishes her. That was Kobe ribeye from Kobe, $200 a portion. Which is wild to me. I can't imagine spending that much on a piece of meat.
I can't imagine spending that much on anything. I do have to say, and I don't know why, but Gerald, for whatever reason, pronounced it like Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did notice that.
But then later in the film, thankfully, Jesse.
Yeah.
Forgot her name for a second. Says it correctly, but I was wondering if that was a way of like showing Gerald's kind of superficial.
Could be like you don't even respect where it came from.
Like he only bought it because it's $200 a portion, not because
I can see that honestly from
him.
What we know of Gerald. But she apologizes, saying that there were 4 in the fridge, but Gerald just chuckles, saying that she has a good heart and that's why he married her. She starts to pick up the plate, but he stops her. He says to leave it. Well, I mean, you did have it in the road. I'm not eating it after.
No. He's like,
the dog did inspect it, if not eat a little bit. So
Gerald's like, that counts against one of your steaks. I have 2. No. just for future. He's just that kind of asshole. Instead of them both having 1.5 steaks.
No, that was your decision.
Mm-hmm.
But he says it'll be the best meal the dog's ever had. Jessie laughs as she would have only had half a piece anyway as they head inside. With them gone, the dog pokes his head out of the trees again. Jessie lets Gerald lead her inside, laughing as she apologizes again. He asks if she wants to open the champagne now, and she looks back at the open front door, seeming to consider closing it, but she lets Gerald lead her away. Serene music mounts as they walk into the house, passing a framed photo of them on their wedding day.
So I did want to point out that the entrance of the home is on location, but they matched it so well because the bedroom that we're about to see is a set.
Oh, all right.
Wow.
Yeah, it was built, I think they said, in a convention center in Mobile, Alabama.
All right.
Never would have guessed.
No, not at all.
In the next scene, Jessie is in the bedroom wearing the slip. She climbs up onto the bed, but when she realizes the large tag is still attached to the back, she rips it off and places it on the shelf above the bed. She seems anxious, finally settling on a seductive pose and telling Gerald that she's ready. He steps out of the bathroom wearing nothing but his underwear, the cuffs jingling in his hands. Jessie laughs nervously and Gerald tells her that she looks amazing. Still looking a bit uncomfortable, she thanks him and holds out a wrist. She sits up on the bed and Gerald kisses her. She awkwardly warns him of her lip gloss, but the kissing intensifies. Gerald pushes her back onto the bed and climbs on top of her, ratcheting the cuffs. She laughs, saying that she was expecting a furry novelty pair, like you said.
Wow.
But Gerald laughs this off, assuring her that these are the real deal because the others can break if you get going too hard.
Well, the thing is, you're not. Also, I mean, you don't want to be stuck in
You're
there.
stressed out.
You don't want to be stuck in there.
That's A. I think B, Jessie seems very uncomfortable and nervous.
Yeah, this seems like a first time thing.
Yeah, and so I feel like maybe we set the mood first instead of just being like, all right, and these aren't going to fucking break.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's scary.
I bought these off of Harry Houdini.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
if
going
you-
from 0 to 100
yeah,
right now.
if you've never done this before, this isn't your type of thing.
That's not
Maybe
the way
a
to
little bit.
to
Yeah,
introduce
not
it.
right away.
And she's like clearly uncomfortable.
Yes.
I think that's like the worst part because this whole section is, and it only grows increasingly
Oh
uncomfortable.
yeah, it only gets worse.
But the thing for me is that she is seemingly already trepidatious,
Yes.
open to what he's interested in, but he doesn't give a fuck at all.
No, she's trying to meet him
Yeah.
halfway, but he's not
Yeah.
moving. Like he's all the way up on his side.
He's, and we should have known when he honked at the dog that he's a fucking
Yeah.
piece of shit.
I was like, scumbag piece
Yeah.
of shit.
Oh.
I would have honked at the dog. I'd have went around, but I'd have been like, "Hey, get out of the road!"
Nay, we got to talk about JP.
I'm trying to
Well,
tell you guys.
you would have been worried the dog was gonna get hit.
Well, yeah,
you
I
would have
don't-
been like,
well,
"Hey,
that's what-
man,
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
be eating in the road or whatever."
No, just
Fuck,
don't
Gerald.
pull it to the side, man.
Gerald had no reason to be
Yeah.
mad.
Yeah, well, just don't be kind to animals.
Yes, that's the
is
bottom line.
Yeah, feed them $200 steaks.
But he promises her that she'll like this as he cuffs one of Jessie's hands to the bedpost. She watches him with a small, nervous smile as he does the same to the other hand to the opposite post. He asks if it's okay, and she says yes. He asks her to try to move, and she does, unable to do more than rattle the cuffs against the posts. I think now's a good time to point out that the headboard is from the laser glass from
All right,
Oculus.
yeah.
Isn't that fucking cool?
It is. And the thing is that it's one of those things that you have to be like, you got to be a Flanagan.
Exactly.
Because there's like, it's clearly it.
Right.
Once you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're not looking
That's
at a
cool,
headboard.
though.
Yeah, that's really cool. He tells her that he loves the slip she's wearing, and she says that she bought it special. But then he slides off the bed and yanks her down, saying he'll like it better around her shoulders. Which, like, he's just not receptive to anything
No.
that she's...
But in all fairness, this started in the car. And I'm not the dog,
No.
not the honking of the dog. We're
If
past
we
that.
could we could just go back to the moment.
When he honks at that poor defenseless animal. No, whenever they're driving and they're just listening to music and he's already trying to put his hand,
Yeah.
Right.
and she has to come on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the only thing that's been on his mind.
Yeah.
That and the steaks.
The value
Well,
of the stakes.
I real quick though, I do want to say that just because he obviously only thinks about that doesn't make him a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit for other reasons.
Well,
Right, right.
Yeah, but
there's-
if I understand what you're saying about her pushing his hand away, because that's a big already, like you said, a sign. But
ease into things and not just be.
He's fucking got boundary issues. That's what this dude's problem is.
I think they say they've been together for 11 years at this point.
Yeah.
And he's still, it's like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You would know your partner.
You should know. Yeah,
you should know when your partner's uncomfortable, what makes them uncomfortable, what soothes them, and if you know that that's not something, don't do that. You know what I mean?
But that's why I'm saying he just doesn't seem to care.
Oh, no, yeah.
Not at all.
He's a fucking...
It's all about what he wants. It's just garbage.
But Gerald goes back to the bathroom with a big smile and gets himself a small glass of water. Jesse looks over at him and notices the Viagra bottle on the counter. Gerald looks at her with a smile before slipping back into a sinister character, if it's a character. He muses, well, look what I found. And he says that he bets Jesse wants him to leave. The smile drops from her face at this turn that was obviously not agreed on. Gerald sets the cup of water on the shelf above the bed before pulling the pillows out from underneath Jesse. He says that her husband will probably be home any minute and that she can scream if she wants to, but there's no one around for miles. Jesse calls his name cautiously, but he doesn't respond to it, playfully saying that she doesn't get to know his name. She continues to try to play along, but he tells her to call out for help. She does so half-heartedly, chuckling awkwardly, but he urges her to do it for real. She's like, what are we trying to do here? She admits that this is making her feel weird when the point was to make her feel sexy. But Gerald kisses her and urges her to call for help again, so she does. He continues kissing her chest, but when he bites her, she says that it really hurt.
So obviously, not only is it adding to the discomfort of watching the scene,
yes,
but it also accomplishes something for the audience to know how isolated they are.
Yeah.
That the front door's open.
Yes.
And you're calling for help and nobody's around to hear you. But in response to her telling him that hurt, he covers her mouth. And this is the line for Jesse. She says that she doesn't like this and she tells him to stop. This spurs him on, him commending her for making this feel real, but this is real. She tells him again and again to stop, but when he tells her that daddy gets what daddy wants, she's had it. She yells at him to stop and uncuff her now, and this finally gets through to him.
Yeah, I don't understand. She was saying pineapple over and over, and he's just he's not understanding.
In the novel, it kind of goes a little bit further to the point where, like, from Jesse's point of view, she's like, oh, he knows I'm being serious and he's pretending like he doesn't.
Yeah, no.
And it's like, ugh, it's just awful. So Gerald laughs, asking if she's playing, but she tells him to wipe that stupid grin off his face, uncuff her, and stop calling himself daddy. He reminds her that this is why they came up here, to spice things up and push boundaries. But Jessie says that she did say she would try a few things. She did, and it's not working. Indicating her cuffs, she asks if this is really what it takes these days. He sarcastically apologizes for trying to make things more exciting, but Jessie reminds him that he hasn't shown any interest or touched her in months, until she told him she'd let him play a sex game, and now it's taken a very dark turn toward a fantasy she didn't know he had. She asks him again, calmly this time, to just take the cuffs off because this was never going to save them. That was, like, sad.
Very.
Well, god damn, dude.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the importance of communication.
Yeah. This is really giving, but I wanted it right now, and you're not. I mean, it's like
bad.
You're not even fucking like hearing what she's saying.
No, and that's the thing, is that half of communication is fucking listening.
Yeah.
And she gave you every indication.
Yeah.
And try a few things isn't I'm gonna fucking tie you to the bed or cuff you to the bed and not let you go. That's not a
when you tell me to.
Maybe like, oh, here's a feather or tickle my feet with something. You know what I mean? I'm just I'm trying to be tame, but you know what I mean. But that that's okay. Maybe if this is not your thing, you're jumping headfirst into some shit.
0 to 100.
She did not fucking agree to at all,
and it's clearly not her thing.
No.
Yeah.
And if this is about saving the relationship, aren't we supposed to both be comfortable?
Yes.
Aren't we supposed to do things that both of us will enjoy?
Exactly.
In theory. He looks at her for a moment and she admits that she feels ridiculous. He goes, oh, so now I'm ridiculous. This made me like that pissed me off a lot.
Yeah.
He says that she can't blame him for not getting excited anymore when she doesn't even try. She tells him again to uncuff her so that they can talk, but he asks her, what if I won't? She stares at him in disbelief, saying that he has to. He crawls on top of her, saying again, "What if I'm sweet?" She calmly instructs him to go to the bathroom and get the keys off the counter. But Gerald will not listen, and when he leans in, she bites his lip. He asks her what the fuck is the matter with her, and after a moment of consideration, he asks how they went so wrong. Jesse doesn't have an answer for this, and Gerald grabs at his chest and flexes his left arm, something clearly bothering him, but he's like not
registering.
Yeah.
I did appreciate when her response to him saying, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" She goes, "With me?"
For real.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Are
we watching the same?
Yeah.
Because one person is very clearly in the
There's
wrong.
a very skewed
Yes.
reality happening here. But he says that they used to be happy once, and she agrees. He asks her again, "Weren't we?" And something is clearly very wrong. His breath becomes shaky, and he's unable to respond to her when she calls his name, alarmed. She gets more and more frantic as Gerald begins to shake and grunt, and finally he collapses on top of her. Jessie panics. With her arms still spread wide and cuffed to the posts, all she can do is cry and kick at Gerald. She manages to prop him up with her foot. She holds him there, and Gerald's eyes are open, but he's completely unresponsive and slumped onto her foot. She begs him to wake up, but his dead weight only propels him backward, off of her. He lands softly on the foot of the bed before rolling over and hitting the floor with a very concerning thud.
I will say two things, because I hate to laugh. Because the heart attack was so convincingly done.
Yeah.
There was only one moment that was a little humorous to me.
Oh, no.
Because he literally puts his finger up like 1 second. And I'm like, that's such odd composure for someone who is clearly having a heart attack. But outside of that, no, brilliant performance. I did want to talk about Bruce Greenwood.
Yeah.
Because this dude was actually recommended to Mike Flanagan by Stephen King.
Oh,
shit.
wow.
Because apparently I also learned that Stephen King, he doesn't have final say, but he does have input when it comes to casting sometimes.
God
Oh,
damn.
nice.
He has more, I think after Kubrick, he's like, look.
You got to go through
I
me.
bet. Right, because he didn't like The Shining, huh?
And I disagree, but yeah, he hated it like a lot. He still talks about it.
Damn.
That was like 40 years ago, dude. But Bruce Greenwood, whenever he got the part, he saw in the screenplay that he was going to be in his underwear a lot. And you told me, Reneé, that Gerald in the novel is completely different
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah.
So he said, well, if he's going to be in his underwear a lot, then Gerald's in great shape.
I mean,
And
Yeah.
Mike Flanagan's like, all right. So Bruce Greenwood spent 8 weeks
Damn.
dieting and training. And then, not only that, because he's like clearly flexing when,
Yes. Yeah.
when he's on screen, but he would, between takes, he would do crunches.
Oh. Of course.
And so
you know what? I don't blame him. Not
Yeah.
even a little bit.
after he was done with the crunches, he would like just lay out on the floor and hang out. But the thing is that for a lot of the film, what we see of Gerald is a dummy.
All right.
And so Flanagan would come up and he'd be like, all right, look, Bruce. And he would tell him all the stuff that he had, his ideas for the scene. And then like 5 minutes into the conversation, he's like, that's the dummy. I've been talking to the dummy for 10 minutes.
It's like, are you like mad at me, dude?
He's like,
Why
what the
aren't you-
fuck? So no input?
right, you
you
don't like
talking
the
to-
idea?
Yeah,
Like,
you can just say you don't like it. That's fine. We'll move on. We'll do something else.
well, he dies there, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, where
Yeah.
else is he supposed to go?
But I
That's fucking funny.
I will say that how convincing that dummy is, I can't tell when
Very
it's,
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
when it's not Bruce Greenwood. So I get it.
Jessie lifts herself the best she can, raising to a sitting position. But even with this view, all she can see is Gerald's motionless hand splayed onto the floor and the very top of his head. She calls out to him, begging him to say something, but Gerald remains silent. She screams, shaking the cuffs and trying to lift them off the posts, but it's no use. She tries to compose herself and focus on Gerald again, sternly demanding that he wake up. This does not work.
That would suck so fucking bad.
I can't imagine the panic.
Even if this was all good and it wasn't a bad situation,
Yeah.
that would fucking be terrible.
I think it's the desperation and the realization.
Yeah.
Because it's like, right now to her, there's still a chance we're getting out of this soon.
Yeah.
But there's a moment that is played so quietly.
My
No,
God.
yeah.
And that the second that happens, I'm like, oh my God.
No,
Like,
yeah.
This is just what it is.
She screams for help before giving a weak chuckle and asking Gerald if that sounds more real. She tries to bargain with him, telling him that he can do whatever he wants if he'll just get back up on the bed. As she begins to cry, she looks down at the very top of Gerald's head and watches as a pool of blood begins to form underneath him.
That is when I was like,
Oh, we're fucked.
Yeah.
so that's what this movie is.
Yeah.
I will say that the camera pressing in on Jesse after that, just great.
Yeah. As it slowly becomes larger on the floor, Jessie is stricken silent. Then, in pure desperation, she calls for help again. From outside the house, we can hear her, but as we get further away down the road, her cries become drowned out.
There's something so, like, knowing what's going on in that house and the serenity of the exterior.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like, it's a very weird feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're just alone.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
and I remember my mom had a canopy bed that had the posts on it, and my older brother, I think, broke one of the posts. So I was like, why isn't she trying to yank on it? You know what I mean?
Trust
Yank,
me, it's easy.
Well, this one looks pretty sturdy.
Yeah.
Hers, it was like little screw-on ones. And then it was nice, but I mean, my brother's also a lot bigger than I am.
There's a throwaway line later that I'm like, that barely explains it.
I know exactly what you're
Like,
saying.
all right, I guess.
But time passes this way, and we see dusk begin to creep in. Breeze moves the curtains next to the open windows, and we see everything Jessie needs as she cries out weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. We see the car keys set on the dresser, her phone on the nightstand. Gerald, useless and lying in a puddle of blood on the floor. We see Jessie, defeated, still on the bed, quietly calling for help.
I loved that time-lapse match cut.
Yeah.
I'm very easy to impress. Like, that stuff is so cool to me.
Oh, and then later we have red lights too.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. So this film will get a high score.
She whispers at Gerald to wake up before chuckling and cheerily telling him, "It's time to wake up, honey." She freezes when she hears a branch snap outside the open windows. There's a sound of footsteps in grass, and Jessie calls out, "Hello." The sounds continue, but no one answers her. She just stares at the windows, heartbroken, before weakly calling out again. She muses that in an hour or so, it will be so dark. She's interrupted again by the sound of the gate banging open loudly. She calls out, saying that they're back here and that Gerald is hurt. She asks if it's their neighbors, Nate and Kelly, but again, no one answers her. She looks very hopeful until worry begins to creep into her face. A shadow appears in the doorway, but instead of someone to save her, the dog steps into the room.
Now, did anyone else hear dog noises before we saw the dog? Like, I knew the dog before he came to class.
Maybe that's what Nate sounds like. We don't know
It's
these
like,
people.
oh, great, Nate's here. Fantastic. But the dog doesn't need to treat the gate like that then.
No,
Yeah.
it was rude. It's like, what bill are you paying to be slamming shit around like that? She bitterly tells the dog hi and asks how the steak was, advising him that it was $200 a portion. She asks if he's a rescue dog, but the blank stare he gives her is answer enough. The dog whines as it steps towards Gerald, clearly intrigued. Jessie snaps at him, telling him to back away, but the dog's hunger wins over his fear and he begins to sniff Gerald's arm. Jessie yells at the dog, kicking and stomping her feet on the bed, and he is scared away for a moment, but he comes he comes right back to Gerald.
It's like, well, that was weird.
Yeah.
All right, what was I doing?
Jesse's protests mean nothing, and he begins to take a bite out of crime, and by crime, I mean Gerald's arm.
So dog bites man, huh? That'll be in the paper tomorrow.
Jessie is desperate now, trying again in futility to take the cuffs off the posts. She finally reaches up to the shelf above the bed and finds a book. Midnight fucking Mass.
Amazing.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention the first time, but you know what I mean? Again, it wasn't something that was out.
Yeah.
And then I told your sister, I did notice the Midnight Mass book this time when I watched it.
That's so cool.
It's so cool because all it meant was, oh, that's Maddie's book.
Yeah.
At the time, that's
At the time, yeah.
They talked on the commentary that Mike Flanagan was in the process of getting Midnight Mass going.
Right.
At this point, I think in 2021 when he was talking about it. So seeing that book.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And he knows. It's just the Mike Flanagan universe.
I was, you're really expecting it to be a Stephen King novel, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
But again, and that's the thing to me is like, there's some references made later. I'm like, if this is a Stephen King novel and you're referencing Stephen King novels, you're going to open a hole in the time-space continuum.
We're all fucked. We're all going to fall
That's how
through.
you get out. You get sucked through.
Oh, all right.
She grabs the book and flings it as best she can, yelling at the dog to get the fuck away. The dog does, retreating to the doorway, but he's already gotten his prize, a mouthful of Gerald's arm meat.
Now,
There's no other way to describe
I
it.
don't know why I wrote it like that.
I know we don't see a lot of this, but that looked good.
It did.
Yes, it
It
did.
looked good. I was like, oh man, he's really biting this motherfucker.
I will say that the guy who was the head of the special effects, or makeup effects, I should say,
Yeah.
Robert Kurtzman.
Hell
All right,
yeah.
all right.
So, it's Robert Kurtzman.
Yeah.
They said that for a lot of it, the dog was the dog. But there are moments where the dog is a puppet operated by Mike Flanagan.
All right.
And I can't tell.
No,
And
not at all.
I never clocked that one time.
No.
Hell no.
You're so focused on the action, you don't think that there was a moment in Suspiria where you're like, somebody's wearing a dog glove.
I was going to say, what if we go back and it's just a Muppet? How do we never notice
It's
that?
Triumph.
Yeah.
Fuck.
You learn things every time you watch this movie. God
Is there a
damn.
cigar?
The dog looks back at her with the flesh hanging from his mouth, and Jesse gags, which I feel like is the only reasonable reaction. She wails and begs the dog no as he digs in. She curls into herself, crying, but is frozen when Gerald's hand plops down on the bed. Gerald stands up, horrified over the chunk taken out of his arm. Jesse can only stammer out apologies. He puts together that it was the dog that she fed. She tells him that she's sorry and that he was right and that she was so wrong. She begs him to uncuff her and just hold her. But Gerald is hung up on the goddamn dog. Jesse's face is filled with relief as she looks over in the direction that Gerald is indicating toward the dog. But her face falls when she sees that still on the floor, still barely in view, are Gerald's splayed out hands framing the pool of blood on the floor.
You would hope it would take more than a few hours to be hallucinating like this.
You would hope.
But the mind, she has seen and experienced too much.
Yeah.
I think that this is only a natural reaction. Like that, seeing the dog do that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's got to break something.
The dead body's enough,
Yeah.
but now fucking nature's getting involved.
And not nature. But this is the point where I was like, oh, because in the novel, every conversation that she has is in her own head, which I guess is still accurate here. But it's all versions of herself. Like there's Pumpkin, which she calls her younger self. There's like this Puritan version of herself. There's like a friend she had, I think, in college that she's carrying a secret from her childhood, and this friend almost gets it out of her, and so she stopped being friends with her after that. So these are all voices that are in her head that are talking to each other and talking to her, and like the kind of Puritan, I think she calls her Goody, is kind of, I think, what the one that kind of becomes Gerald the most. Because she's you're not going to get out of this. Like, you're just going to hurt yourself if you try that. Well, if you try that, that's stupid. But, I mean, and Gerald kind of takes the reins, you know what I mean, in that regard. But when he stood up, I was like, oh, so this is how we're representing, like, the outside voice.
I think it's a smart choice because not only when you have an actor as good as Bruce Greenwood, use him.
Yeah.
But also, we already don't like Gerald.
Yeah.
And so let's put all this negative shit in his
For
mouth.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, to see her saying negative shit to herself would be kind of counterproductive.
Right.
Well, and like everything that we go through with her, it's like like we don't need that too.
No.
Yeah, I feel like too. Honestly, if they tried to make a bunch of different versions of her, it would look really weird, or it would get muddy. It would just look, I don't know, trying to fit a bunch of her in the room.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's okay.
I could just easily see it being confusing or like being too much.
Yeah.
I've never seen Orphan Black, but that's what I thought.
But that was the one aspect when I heard that this was going to be a movie that I was like, I wonder how they're going to do that.
Yeah.
And doing it this way, I'm like, that's fucking genius.
Mike Flanagan on commentary said that he was afraid to show that to Stephen King because it was such a big change.
I bet. I mean, it's probably the biggest change.
It works, though.
It does.
Oh, yeah. I honestly, if I had a choice, because I've never read the book, I would prefer this.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Because for me, I would think that would be the same. You know what I mean? If your sister would be there to talk me back, or like you know what I mean? In my head, your sister's there to want to be like, no, it's gonna be okay. You know what I mean? We can
At
get
least
through
I'm
this,
not
whatever.
doing Gerald's
what he's
part.
gonna get.
That would
You're
be me.
stuck forever.
Yeah, that would be me.
But she looks up at the Gerald standing in front of her, who continues to scold her, telling her that the dog smelled blood and did what dogs do. Gerald runs toward the dog, hopping over his own body to kick at him, telling him that he hopes he chokes. He bitterly tells Jesse that he should have just let her cut up the whole steak, because then maybe the dog would have been full. Then again, he says they always smell the fresher meat.
The interesting thing about, obviously that line's terrible because of what it portends, but it reminds me of like a dream where everyone you meet in a dream is you. Mm-hmm. These are all thoughts that she's having,
right,
that's coming through the mouth of her dead husband.
Yeah.
And that adds a layer to it that is also...
Yeah.
It's haunting, honestly.
And is that even how dogs work? I thought sharks were like, if they smell blood, they're gonna be like, oh, I want to eat. I thought dogs were like, oh shit, let me help people, or let me go, please come over here, guys. Somebody's like, what, Lassie?
I was gonna say, I think it's just Lassie.
Lassie's the only.
Is that how dogs work?
Like they're an iPhone.
Well, no, but like I don't
That's not
think
how I programmed my dog.
Yeah, no.
I've had dogs before growing up, and I don't think any of them, when I hurt myself, ran in the house and were like, who's cut? Who's bleeding?
I've never had a dog. I do know that animals eat corpses.
They do. Cats do too.
Yeah, they'll eat your eyes and shit.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, I love cats enough. You can have my eyes. That's fine.
It's a small price to
Yeah,
pay.
they're going to close my eyes in the casket anyway. That's fine. Pop,
Just put the coins over my eyes.
yeah. Pop a few grapes in there. No one will know the
one will
difference.
ever know. He comes back over to the bed, asking if she remembers the joke that she heard him tell. He says he was 4 or 5 drinks into the night when she came up behind him. He was telling a joke to a client in that low, guys-only tone, and he reminds her that she didn't hear the beginning of the joke, only the end. And what is a woman anyway? He says that he did his little pause he does when he's proud of a joke, and then calls on Jesse to give the punchline. She stares back at him before starting to tell it quietly, but it's not good enough for him, so he sets her up again. And what is a woman anyway? Jesse recites the punchline harshly, a life support system for a cunt. He's like, that's it. He says that she never even told him that she heard him say that. She never said a word, and she smiled through the whole night, even though she hated him a little bit, but she never brought it up. Jesse says that she didn't because that's not who he is and he doesn't talk that way. Gerald asks if that's really what it was, if he was really just putting on a show for a client and stooping to his level, or if that's really who Gerald was underneath it all. Jesse has nothing to say to this, and he advises her to never ask a question that you don't want to know the answer to. She chuckles and agrees, and he repeats the punchline at Jesse, adding the word stupid.
So he's not a good husband. He's not much of a comedian. There's no redeeming.
Yeah, he's
mean to dogs.
Yeah.
He honks at dogs.
He honks at dogs. This fucking guy, I just can't. I can't believe it. I will say that one thing I have to mention is obviously Carla Gugino is amazing in this movie.
Oh my God.
Bruce Greenwood does not get the credit he deserves because there are some monologues that he has in this film that chill me to the bone.
Yeah.
And it's all down to how he performs them.
Yeah.
Right.
And lines like this, I think Flanagan had said that the majority of the things that Gerald says are, quote, word for word from the book.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good, though. When you can fit that in there and make
Yeah.
it feel
Yes.
natural.
Because it does.
Yeah.
He asks how long she's been chained to the bed and she never heard him breathe. He says that she's been listening to him breathe for the last 11 years. That special Gerald only purr he gets in the back of his throat. She's been chained to that bed for hours and never heard it once. He says that she knew 5 minutes after his head hit the floor and saw the blood that he was dead, but she just laid there wasting precious time calling his name. A confused look on her face, Jessie asks what's happening. Gerald looks right into Jessie's face, right at us, with a smile and says that he's pretty sure she just lost her mind. Now Jessie stares straight at us, unable to do anything but chuckle. Gerald gives her an out, saying that listening to a dog eat your husband is a great excuse to have a mental breakdown. Jessie agrees, still chuckling.
This all feels very King.
Very much.
Like it's great.
She admits to him that the blood stopped spreading a while ago. He says that she did what she always does. She ran into her mind. He says that she called him again and again, letting time tick by. He says that maybe she's remembering that joke right now because she should be thinking about life support. He asks why she's thinking about it, and she tells him, time. He says she's right. She's a life support system and she's been unplugged. She's still got juice, but the charge is running down and it will drain to zero if she doesn't get out of the cuffs.
I thought she was remembering the joke to make herself feel better about Gerald.
Being dead? Being dinner?
Yes.
He's an asshole, but I mean, time is of the essence.
Yeah.
You should have been trying to get the fuck out of here. Like, I know we're in shock and we're like, what the fuck? But, oh, you're not getting up. I got to get out of here.
I putting myself in the situation, I really don't know what I would do.
No.
I would probably be talking to a version of as a dog ate my wife, I guess.
After 5 minutes?
Yeah.
He asks her when they got here, and she looks over at the phone on her nightstand, so close but still out of reach. She guesses around 1 o'clock. He asks how long until they got into bed, and she says maybe an hour. He says that's 2 o'clock. How long until he had the heart attack? Maybe 10 minutes after. When has the sun been setting? 7:15 or so. Suddenly, Gerald is standing at the window, looking out at the sky that is getting steadily darker. He says that's another 15 or 20 minutes tops. He estimates that it's been about 5 hours. He's next to her by the bed now, saying that she's wasted 5 hours screaming for neighbors who are half a mile away, and she finishes with him, if they're even here yet. He's pacing the floor again, and they finish each other's sentences as she remembers that Nate and Kelly said they won't be coming out until June this year. The bed is made and the house is dusted, which means the maids already came and went yesterday. The grass was freshly cut, meaning no gardeners are coming either. This back and forth between the two of them is just...
Oh, yeah.
It is chef's kiss. He says because he arranged all of that to get the place ready for them to come today, and he didn't want anyone interrupting their little game. So he assumes they gave them at least the weekend off. They ask, so who could possibly hear her scream? Gerald chimes in, besides Cujo over there. Obvious reference to Cujo. We see Jessie on the bed, and she is alone in the room again. Alone besides the dog who continues chewing on Gerald's arm. She looks over at her hand and tries to squeeze it out of the cuff, but it's no use. Suddenly, Gerald is next to her again, reminding her that she already tried that. He says that she can pull until her wrists break, but she is not getting out of those cuffs. Jessie yells as she tries to pull her hand out of the cuff. Gerald is gone now, and somehow Jessie succeeds. Her hand slips free and she laughs in relief, telling Gerald that she told him. She jumps to her feet and is able to break the second post and easily pull the cuff off. She walks over to the door and sighs, smiling. She looks back at the bed and says that it's just that easy.
When I saw that, I was like, what a strange short film.
Yeah.
Hold the fort.
But when we look back at the bed, Jessie is still cuffed to both posts and Gerald stands next to her. He tells her that she's really losing it now. Her hand is not going to fit through the cuff, and he tells both Jessies that the bedposts are reinforced.
Come on. That's when I was like, what are we doing here?
But honestly, I bet if she got enough leverage and grabbed them from the top and pulled in, one of them is going to break.
No, they're reinforced.
With what?
That's
Steel?
not how it works.
Yeah, no.
Like what? And why
They're
would
adamantine.
you?
It was built out of a tree.
It's Wolverine's fucking leg or whatever. Like, what are we doing here?
He tells her it was a nice thought, though. The free Jessie tells Gerald to shut up. She reminds Jessie that Gerald is the reason that they're here to begin with, but Gerald says that he's just trying to tell Jessie how things really are. Free Jessie says that he's doing what he always did, minimizing her and being condescending. She says that men aren't really blessed with penises, they're cursed by them. Gerald laughs at this, but when Free Jessie continues that they might die today because of Gerald's 5 inches, he's not laughing anymore.
He looks away like you didn't have to.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's not wrong.
that was rude. She tells Jessie that their life has to add up to more than that. Jessie says that she can't get out, but Free Jessie asks about the mothers that are able to lift cars off of their kids. Gerald snidely remarks that Jessie is no mother, and both Jessies look at him. Jessie asks what that is supposed to mean. Gerald comes back over to her and says that she has no maternal instinct. She says that his career came first, but Gerald says that's just an excuse that she used. Maybe she even started to believe it, but he says that she can't hide anything from him now.
So I just want to say very quickly, I thought Carla Gugino was putting on a clinic before.
Literally.
And now she's fucking playing 2 characters, which is just incredible.
She's amazing.
They had talked on commentary, and this shocked the hell out of me, but she was not the first actress attached to this film. And Mike Flanagan actually had cast someone, and they were about 3 weeks out from filming. And he wouldn't say who it was.
I'm so curious.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't solve that mystery. But he had said that he called her and he was like, look, we've got a lot of scenes where we're going to have doubles going on. So I wanted to know if you use somebody in other films as a double that you could have work opposite you.
Yeah.
And she goes, what are you talking about? And he goes, the script, Gerald's game.
Yeah. It's kind of a huge part of it.
It's a big deal.
Have you not been rehearsing?
But he comes to find out that actress was sent the wrong script.
Oh.
She was sent the one that the other person was trying to get made.
Oh, no.
Between Flanagan's attempts.
Yeah.
And so that version apparently had a much more comical tone. And there was a lot
How?
more. I do not know.
What?
But there were a lot more people involved, and it was not this like small cast, small character situation. It was a much bigger film. And so they talked about it over a weekend. He's like, well, I'll, if you want to look into it, read mine, and we can get back on the phone at another time. We're like 2 weeks out from production.
Yeah.
And so when they eventually get back on the phone together, she tells him that she doesn't want to do the part anymore.
Well, if she thought it was some slapsticky version of Gerald's game,
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe this isn't your bag.
No.
Yeah.
I would love to know who it was.
Yeah.
But this is how they eventually get in contact with Carla Gugino, who was on his short list for this part, but it eventually comes to her, and within 2 weeks, she has to do all of this.
Yeah.
Learn everything. Like, she is just an incredible actress.
Oh, yeah.
And they had said that the most difficult part about it was that the entire bedroom set had already been built, and it was built to the dimensions of the other actress because it has to make sense logistically. And so they had to kind of tear down a few things and rebuild them because now it's Carla Gugino.
Yeah.
But just the fact that she was able to come in and
have to step in.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because this is her role.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to say, you had said the thing about a ton of different Jesse's walking around and everything.
Yeah.
I feel like this, to me, speaks to like that angel-devil dynamic.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
And it just works. It works way better to just have 2 instead of however many it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Sorry, Stephen.
Well, I mean, something that works well for a book doesn't necessarily work well visually.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Right, but that goes back to talking about how much he respects the material to find a way to still make it work and kind of stay with the source material.
Yes.
So I like I said, I've never read it, and I enjoyed this a lot.
I have, and I do too. But Free Jessie interrupts that they don't have time for this. Jessie only asserts with frustration that she is chained to the bed and she can't get out. Free Jessie tells her not to just recite facts, but to wake up. I am calling her Free Jessie to cut down on confusion.
Are we on the subtitles? They called her Jessie too.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Electric Boogaloo or whatever. I think you're fine.
But she says that this is her all over. Problem, panic, denial. She says that she hopes if she looks away from something, it'll just vanish. But if she doesn't wake up now, she's going to die in those handcuffs. She reminds Jessie that they both know she's been sleepwalking since she was 12 years old. Jessie snaps at her, not now. This gets Gerald's attention, and Free Jessie asks, if not now, when? Gerald asks, not now, what? Jessie doesn't say a word, but Free Jessie says that he put her in those handcuffs long before Gerald ever did. Gerald comes over to Jessie and asks, who's he? Jessie refuses to answer. She closes her eyes and takes a deep breath, and then she's alone in the room again. She watches the sunlight on the bedroom door, but it slowly fades as night fully settles in.
I feel like having them there it's got to be a little comforting to have some kind of.
Yeah, because
so it's like great chat, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for fucking disappearing.
When you see her alone, it's like, oh no,
my God.
but like nobody was
come
really
back.
Yeah. I don't know why it's a weird false sense of security because she's always been alone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But when they left, I was like, no.
Don't do this. Jessie shifts her attention to the phone. She reaches out with her foot trying to grab it, but Gerald is back. He tells her that the phone's going to die anyway because he never charged it. Free Jessie sidles up next to him, commenting that he never did a load of laundry either. Jessie goes back to trying to grab the phone, but she goes back into seating position where she can't reach it.
I feel like the laundry line, like, all right, you're right,
Yeah.
you sitcom. I get it, I respect it, but
Yes, dear.
the crowd like goes wild. Can we please just get her out of these handcuffs, please? Can we focus on that?
Focus up.
Then we'll call ABC or whatever.
So here's my thing.
Okay.
This movie came out in 2017, right?
Yes.
So I'm assuming this is the time, right? It's 2017,
Yes.
like, or in the movie.
If you're going where
Are
you
you
think
talking
you're
about the
going.
phone?
Well, yeah. What kind of phone is it?
Well, hold on. I do have a reason.
Please. The desperation.
Because no, I went and
Yeah, I
looked
know.
on the interweb here.
Mike Flanagan said on commentary, and he said straight up, he said if there's one thing he can change from this film, it would be that Jessie plugged the phone up in the car and forgot to bring it inside. And they would show a shot of it in the car when she's doing that inventory.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when this was filmed, Hey Siri was not a thing. When it came out, it was. And so the audience is like, why doesn't she just?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, she couldn't. Because
I'm not going to lie. I fully
I
just
thought-
accepted it. I never even thought about it.
I thought,
I was like, oh no, the phone's all the way over there. I use Hey Siri about 800 times a
You
day,
do.
and I didn't even think
and
about
it's
it.
annoying, man. It never listens.
It doesn't. She doesn't like me.
No.
Well, see, I'm an Android user, so
Okay.
I don't have the
No, I'm
Siri, whatever that is.
I'm just kidding.
Well, Google takes care of me, all right? Yeah, you gotta worry about
You
that.
just divided our audience in half.
But so it says that Siri came out in 2011, though. That it was one of
Well-
the first voice recognition systems.
It's the way that it's used. I think
You had to push the
Yeah.
button. All right.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting there watching it. And I was like, wait a minute, that's an iPhone. Why didn't you just call for help hours ago?
It straight
the
up
other
is.
day.
Now, I will say that I'm taking Mike Flanagan's word for it because I did not research any of this. So me and him are going to die on that same hill. If he's wrong, I do apologize.
But I just thought it was funny because I was like, man, why didn't you call before?
Yeah.
But I mean,
You're like, I guess.
yeah.
But when she can't get the phone, Gerald mockingly tells her, tough luck. But Free Jessie thinks pragmatically. She says to forget the phone because it may as well be on Mars. She says if Jessie can't get off the bed, then she needs to live long enough for someone to find her on it. Jessie nods in agreement, and once again, she's alone in the room with the dog, who continues to feast on Gerald. She winces in pain, and then Gerald is there, lying next to her. He asks what's wrong, and she admits that her head hurts. He asks if she knows why, and with a smirk, she says, life support. He asks how long someone can live without water, and she guesses 3 days. He says at best, but he agrees that 3 days sounds about right. I'm like, you just give it to her, dude. Like,
well, it's her thought.
Yeah.
So I mean,
at best.
I guess
no,
we're
that
right.
sounds right.
Yeah.
That sounds right. He says it's been about 7 hours now. She looks at him and begins to cry as she admits that she just wanted to please him so badly. She looks over at his bottle of Viagra and says that this was such a stupid fucking idea. Gerald goes to the bathroom and picks up the bottle. He asks if she remembers when he first started taking it, and he hid it from her for 6 months. Jessie does remember, saying that she found the prescription. And Gerald says that she found it, but she never said anything. He knew that she'd seen it, but he still kept hiding it, and they never talked about it. Which is like, he just had it out today.
Yeah,
He's like
he
fuck
doesn't
it.
care.
So I guess he did go and get them then.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, remember when I bought
Yeah,
these on the street? I don't think
I mean, he's a lawyer. So
That
I
is-
mean,
hey, who
never
knows?
know. Jessie recalls one time when he tried without it, but he couldn't until he held her wrists above her head. Gerald says that he hadn't done that before, but Jessie said he had. But this time, Gerald finishes that he grabbed her throat, and he does it now. We'll just say that it got the wind into Gerald's sails. He's, he has no decorum. I'll just say
no,
that.
there is an extreme lack of decorum.
yeah.
He has been
A startling lack of decorum.
as the representative of the Decorum Forum, I will be fining Gerald an obscene amount. He is a lawyer. He can.
He can pay it.
Yes.
He's got his fucking summer home. He can pay the fine.
You mean my summer home?
He says that she was a dutiful wife and she didn't object. He lets go of her throat and says that for the first time in all those years, she wondered, and Jessie finishes, who exactly did I marry? Gerald says that you never really know because everyone has their own little corner and their own little button that they don't want to admit that they want pressed. He says that after all those years, he barely gave her a glimpse of his. Free Jessie interrupts from the doorway and says that one thing is for sure. She's glad he took those little blue pills.
Okay, I will admit that this pissed me off a little bit.
I was like, Jet, what the fuck?
Well, no. It's,
I was like,
well,
what?
I mean, that's garbage. But I was like, why are you speaking in riddles to yourself? Like, it reminded me of when Mac and Dennis lived in the suburbs on Sunny, and he's like, "Are you sure about that?" I don't know. Are you sure? It's like, well, just fucking tell
Why
me.
are you doing this?
You're me. You're me.
On the bed, Jessie is confused, but Free Jessie only reiterates that she's glad. Jessie tries to get into how she felt when she realized he was taking them, but Free Jessie tells her that she doesn't understand. She invites Gerald to take one, and Jessie watches, confused as he does. He puts it in his mouth and chases it with a drink of water from his glass. Free Jessie tells Gerald to give Jessie what she needs, and Gerald eyes her as he walks to the bed and places the glass of water on the shelf above her. A light bulb goes off for Jessie as she looks up above. Free Jessie thanks God for those little blue pills that always made Gerald so thirsty.
The writing is great
Yeah.
because their way around that, I will admit, I got a little heated a second ago. But that's very, very interesting to kind of push her in the right direction.
Because it's her own mind, and she's following these threads of like, oh, I did see him put the water up there.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so good.
Yeah, I that is something that I don't ever really talk about. Like, is the writing, and this was like I will say, yeah, the story's good, but
Yeah.
I do hear, and I guess, but I like the whole everybody has a little corner, because I don't know about you guys, but I can understand that. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I don't like that part of myself, right? Whatever, or I just don't want to talk about something. I'm not going to talk about it. You know what I mean?
It's putting words to something that is kind of universal.
Yeah.
In a way that you would have never thought of.
Yeah.
But with the new goal, Jessie reaches up to the shelf above her with both hands. She tilts the shelf forward and the glass of water slides to the edge. My anxiety was on fucking 11.
Yeah.
The tension of
It's
this.
so stressful.
Yeah.
She sets the shelf back down and tries to get herself together. She strains as she lifts only one side of the shelf now, letting the glass slowly slide down to her waiting hand at the other end. She picks up the glass and with great effort brings it down. Gerald watches from the foot of the bed, looking amused. Jesse points out that he's smirking, and when she tries to take a drink, she sees why. The chain stops her from being able to fully bring the glass to her face.
I'm sorry, but he's still you. Why are you? He's like, watch this shit. Like, come on, man.
You're thirsty too.
Yeah. He's like, no, seriously, please drink it. I've been screaming for 6 hours.
That sucked, man. Seeing her stop right there.
Yeah.
I was like, no.
it's heartbreaking.
And then waste some of it.
Yeah, because some of
Oh.
it spills out. But she stares at the traitorous glass and Gerald calls her stupid. She begins to fall apart, but Free Jesse snaps into action, telling her not to dare drop it. She coaches her on how to put it back up where she got it from, where she knows that she can reach it again. She sets it down and catches her breath as the dog watches from the doorway. When he starts toward Gerald again, Jesse screams at him to get away, but Free Jesse very calmly gets her attention. She says that the dog is only doing what he has to do to get by and that Jesse needs to do the same. The dog is going to town on Gerald, distracting Jesse as Free Jesse insists that she focus.
So I need to eat Gerald?
Right.
That's the only way out of
Right,
it?
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Here, boy.
When Jesse says she can't focus, Free Jesse tells her to go ahead and give up, and then tomorrow she and Gerald will be together again, inside the dog. This gets Jesse's attention, and she agrees when Free Jesse asks if they can get back to work. Gerald is suddenly crawling on top of her, and Free Jesse is gone. Gerald remarks that he loves this slip, and Jesse tells him good because she bought it special. Free Jesse reminds her that she bought it brand new. Jesse looks up and sees the large tag that she pulled off of the slip peeking from the shelf. She pulls it down and with one shaking hand, rolls it into a crude straw as the dog continues to feast.
This hurt
Oh
so
my
bad
God.
to watch. I was like, no, stop doing that with your hand.
I was afraid she was going to drop it.
No.
Like, I just, oh my God.
Have you ever tried to do that?
No.
That's terrible.
I've never made a straw out of that.
No, I'm saying just like trying to
Oh,
like
just to
do
crush
something
it?
with one hand, like to roll
Oh.
something, or you're messing with something. Just it's like, oh, after a minute, your
The
hand
cramp.
just, yeah.
And she's had no water.
Yeah.
Yes.
What I was thinking, honestly, is I don't know if this can necessarily work, but I'm allowing it because I want her to have a break.
She deserves it
Like,
so much.
I don't care about the logistics.
Right.
Please drink some water.
She sticks the straw in her mouth and then pulls the glass back down. She leans forward and her efforts are rewarded with a drink of water. She starts to gulp it down, but Free Jesse tells her to leave some for later and she listens. She sets the glass back down on the shelf and then pulls the straw out of her mouth and sets it next to the glass. This done and her thirst quenched, she looks dazed. She whines as she looks over at the dog, still chewing on a hunk of Gerald. She starts to doze off and asks Free Jesse why she can't keep her eyes open. Free Jesse says that stress makes your adrenaline and cortisol levels skyrocket and that results in a crash. Gerald tells her to just fade away and assume that it will all be fine.
Why?
Like, you're fucking
Yeah,
dead, dude.
I know.
Groggily, Jessie says that she knows that she shouldn't, but Gerald says that maybe she should. If she's going to be found, it'll probably be tomorrow, not tonight. Jessie says that she's going to need her energy, and Free Jessie agrees. She mutters, tomorrow, as she slumps over and slips into sleep. We are left with the tableau of Jessie sleeping, still chained to both posts. Free Jessie and Gerald frame either side of her, both gripping one of the posts as Gerald's corpse lay motionless in his blood on the floor.
What a bonkers shot.
Yeah.
I loved it so much.
No, it's incredible. We get an outside shot of the house in the darkness of the night before we see the dog sleeping in the doorway to the bedroom. We creep in on the dog slowly, and he wakes up and looks around before running fearfully down the hallway, whining.
That really concerned me.
Yeah. We approach Jessie, who finally wakes up and takes a look around. She sees that the dog is gone and asks where he went. But before she can do anything else, she is hit with pain. This distracts her until she notices the corner of the room next to the windows. There's the vaguest suggestion of a very large person in the shadows, and when she calls out, he comes forward. This is the Moonlight Man, played by Carl Strucken. He steps out for a moment before slipping back into the shadows.
Everything that he is in, he is such a striking figure.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He is, I think, 7 feet tall.
He's a Strucken figure.
Oh, very good.
Right? I hope that's how you say his name.
You're doing your best. That's all.
I'm doing the best I can.
Obviously, Dr. Sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I have to call you out again because you haven't watched Twin Peaks yet.
I'm sorry, guys.
Are you?
No.
Because you haven't watched it. Oh, you're not.
I mean, yes and no.
Yeah, I didn't.
I didn't. Define watched it. Whatever. But this is what I would torment myself with, this section.
Mm-hmm.
And so like seeing it realized in such a way where, and I've said this before, I'm always a sucker in horror movies for is that really there? Like, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Shit. And so when he comes out, it's like, it's horrifying to me.
I gotta say, the addition of the Moonlight Man is one of the greatest choices ever. I think everything that's going on with Jesse already is already the most like horrifying situation ever.
Right.
So you don't need this.
No.
Yeah.
But it is just an added layer that only drives like the horror even more. And seeing him and everything that he entails,
Yeah.
it's fucking like incredible to me.
I also really love the name, the Moonlight Man.
Right.
Because in the novel, she refers to him as the space cowboy and the gangster of love.
Some people call him Maurice.
Right.
It's his government, huh? Yeah.
Which is still really cool, but the Moonlight Man is like there's like ethereal, like...
Yeah.
Maurice, would that be scary?
Yeah.
Get out of the corner. Get the fuck out of here.
I meant the other two names.
Oh, all right. But it does look cool because I honestly, the first time I was like, oh, is there something there?
Yeah.
But then paying attention, it's like, oh, he's fucking right there.
Yeah.
But Jessie closes her eyes, trying to get herself together before looking back in the corner. He stepped out of the shadows again, standing closer to the bed. Jessie looks up at him in terror and asks who he is. He starts toward her and she pleads with him, saying that she needs help. She smiles up at him hopefully, and he smiles back. Instead of helping her, though, he looks down at the case in his hands. He holds it open to her, presenting her with shining jewelry and bones. Jessie's smile is gone now. She shakes her head and speaks as calmly as she can, telling him that he's not real.
I don't know why, but he was overjoyed at what he had.
He was real, like pleased with
and
himself.
It's like, oh, bones
Nice
and jewels. Cool.
bracelet. Yeah.
Great. Cool. It really was.
Yeah,
And,
he's just trying to offer something nice.
yeah. And oddly, the quality of the jewels, not so much the bones.
Yeah.
that doesn't matter.
Those look
Wasn't
used.
great.
I don't
That was a
know.
great quality.
Used.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are not new.
Yeah.
They're not even refurbished. But the quality of the jewels, for me, oddly added to the supernatural feel of it.
Okay.
For sure.
Because
Yeah.
it's like, is this like the fucking river Styx? Is this...
Oh, all right.
okay.
You know?
I
And
didn't
so
think about that.
Yeah.
It got me. Also, I do want to say, now that we have a clear view of the Moonlight Man, Carl Strucken went through 4 hours of makeup for every day
Damn.
that he did the film.
Moonlight Man?
I think they call it a film. Motion picture. Yes.
The talkie?
The talkie. Yes. It gets to an hour. I think that things just...
I think we started recording too late.
I think so. We'll retool. We will see you next week.
But Jessie closes her eyes again, and we see his shadow and hear his footsteps as he gets closer to her. We press in on Jessie, who keeps her eyes firmly closed and repeats again that he's not real. Gerald appears next to her, saying, maybe, or maybe you're just not safe anymore. Jessie keeps her eyes closed as Gerald continues. He muses that people are safe from ghouls and ghosts and the living dead in the daylight, and they're usually safe from them at night too, but a person alone in the dark? He says that women alone in the dark are like open doors. If they scream for help, who knows what might answer?
Whether this is King or Flanagan, this is just brilliant.
It's literally chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way he delivers the lines, I can't, dude.
Because it's almost like this, like, I'm just trying to level with you and be honest, but like everything you're saying is the worst thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's part like campfire tale and part like, well, you're a grown woman now.
I can be honest with
Tell you what really happens.
He asks what people see in the moment of their solitary death. He ponders that it's not so hard to believe that some of them could have died of fear, regardless of what their death certificates say. He looks over into the corner as he continues that they died of fear because they saw the Moonlight Man. He says that maybe that's what death looks like. Jessie still has her eyes squeezed shut and she only repeats, not real. Gerald looks back at her and asks, then why did the dog leave?
Come on, man.
It's like, stop.
Yeah. But in all honesty, this is exactly what you do when you're in bed and you hear something. You're like, well, that probably wasn't a demon or anything.
Yeah.
But what about?
Pretty sure I heard a screech.
Jessie opens her eyes and now the corner is empty. Instead of letting her have this victory, Gerald proposes that he just moved under the bed. Maybe he can reach up at any time and put his hand on her hip. Jessie stares at the corner of the bed until a hand does slam down on it from underneath. But when he pulls himself up, it's Gerald wearing a button down.
You fucker.
Yeah.
I was very confused as to why he was wearing a shirt, and then it all makes perfect sense later.
Yeah.
And it's such a slight little bit of foreshadowing that is just, again, the films that reward you with a rewatch.
Yeah.
That moment, it means something.
Yes. He says that if the Moonlight Man wants to put his cold, dead hand on her soft, warm flesh, well, there's nothing you can do about it, Mouse. Jessie asks what he called her, but he ignores this. He tells her to just close her eyes because monsters under the bed won't bother you if you're asleep. He says everyone knows that, Mouse. She tells him not to call her that, and he ignores this again and tells her to dream her dreams and dream deep as it fades to black. We cut to young Jessie, played by Chiara Aurelia, getting out of the car and looking up at her family's lake house. Her father, Tom, played by Henry Thomas, asks her if she's okay, and she comments that the house is so much smaller than she remembers. He tells her this is just because she's bigger. As he walks up to the house, he tells her, come on, Mouse. And like when he says it, the score starts.
Yes.
Because it's this moment of, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
We haven't heard music in a while.
Yeah.
I also do want to call out that back and forth of what she said about the house and his answer to her.
Yeah.
So important later.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I did not catch that until this time.
Jessie follows her father as her little sister and brother, Maddie and James, played by Adeline Jones and Bryce Harper, run alongside them. Their mother, Sally, played by Kate Siegel,
Yes,
who we love,
indeed.
Oh, yeah.
is very pregnant and follows behind them, telling them not to run.
She was actually pregnant with their son.
Oh,
And I think they filmed all of these sections first because within 2 days of her filming, she was getting to the point where she was so far in her pregnancy that she couldn't fly and she had to get back to LA.
oh,
okay.
wow.
And so they filmed her scenes first and then they took her back.
Oh,
I will say that I watching these again, like this movie, I noticed everybody that's in
Yes.
everything else he does.
like, I
Yeah.
know you.
And it's cool because this, I think this is only the second time he worked with Henry Thomas. It's the first time he worked with Carla Gugino.
Yeah.
So it's the building blocks of this Flanagan universe.
Yeah.
Well, and even Bruce Greenwood is in Dr. Sleep for a second.
Yeah. And he's going to be in the Fall of the House of Usher with basically everyone.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
I cannot wait. I can't wait. But as we get shots of an empty dock, the radio announces that for the first time in 26 years, the United States will experience a total solar eclipse.
Was it a solar eclipse we saw in Paris when we were children? Because I remember
I don't know what it was. I just remember being
told not to.
that if I looked at it, my eyes were going to burn on my head.
Yeah, I thought they were going to melt like ice
Yeah,
cream.
I was so horrified. The announcer continues to talk about cities in the path of the eclipse, setting up viewer centers for the guests to safely watch, so their eyes don't burn out. Tom walks down the dock with life jackets, only to be stopped by his younger children to show off the viewers they made to be able to see the eclipse. He tells them to go down to the end of the dock and get on the boat, but he looks up at the house to see Jessie filling a cooler with ice. He goes after Maddie and James. Jesse finishes her job of filling the cooler as the announcer says that their area will experience 2 minutes and 20 seconds of totality starting today at 4:17. Jesse sits down on a swing and Sally comes over to ask if she wants her to make some sandwiches for when they're on the boat. Jesse drops the bomb that she doesn't think she wants to go on the boat today. The lake scares her because people have drowned there. Sally looks unamused. We cut to Tom defending Jesse to Sally. They stand in the kitchen and Tom says that if Jesse doesn't want to go out on the boat, he's not going to force her. Jesse walks into the room in a small sundress, but stops when she sees the discourse. Sally says that they came out here to watch the eclipse on the lake as a family. She says that it won't kill Jesse to spend some time with the whole family because she's a complete daddy's girl. Tom tries to say that that's normal, but Sally is annoyed. Jesse hides behind the wall, but peeks out to hear the rest of the conversation. Tom says that when Sally didn't want to go skiing with them over Christmas, nobody forced her onto the mountain.
Well, we're not talking about me.
Right,
so.
yeah. I'm the adult, though.
Yeah, I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Or not do whatever the fuck. He says that she was allowed to stay at the lodge and relax. Sally invites him to just stay with Jesse then. She says that Jesse is a nuisance anyway, fighting with her younger brother and rolling her eyes at Sally. Tom tries to remind her that Jesse is 12 and that's age-appropriate behavior, but Sally has to point out that she's nothing but smiles and sweetness for Daddy.
I did want to say I know that she doesn't know that her daughter's within earshot, but to call your daughter a nuisance...
I mean, that's a lot. I do get the frustration because I could literally see this happening where we've all planned this whole thing and then one of them is like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. And it's like, that's the whole reason we're here.
Yeah.
I get the frustration, but yeah, you never want to like...
Because the things you say, like, it carries.
Oh, they stick in there.
Yeah.
But Sally tries to explain how she feels and finally just tells Tom that it's fine. The next thing we see is Sally, Maddie, James, and another couple leaving on the boat. Jesse sits on the bench in front of the house, still listening to the radio. The host reminds their listeners not to look directly into the eclipse. They don't say that your eyes will melt out, but your eyes are going to melt out.
Yeah. Look like fucking, what was it, Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Tom changes the channel to 50s music and remarks that that's better. Unless Jesse doesn't want to listen to Daddy's old man music. But Jesse says that she likes it. Tom walks over to the bench, the sun blazing in the sky above him. He tells her that he likes her dress, and Jesse says that her mom told her it was too short, but Tom says that she was wrong. She looks amazing, like a proper young woman. Warning here, again, I know I gave a warning up at the top, but if you think that it was just what happened at the beginning, it is about to get a lot worse. He hands her a viewer so that she can look at the eclipse before sitting down next to her. Jesse asks where his viewer is, and he says that he doesn't know, but she can just scoot close and they'll share. She does, and we get a view through the box as the eclipse begins. Tom tells her that it's starting, and he hands the viewer over to her. As she looks through it, Tom puts an arm behind her and stares at her. She notices and asks him what, and he says that he's just remembering when they used to sit on the swing together when she was little. She would sit in his lap and point at the stars and ask how far away each one was. Jesse chuckles and says that that's embarrassing, but Tom disagrees. He says it's the sweetest. She looks through the viewer again as the moon continues to encroach upon the sun, and Tom says that he and Mouse had some good times out here. He tries to dismiss a thought as stupid, but when she asks him what it is, he asks, well, how about it, for old time's sake? In the way, like, you know, when somebody wants to say something, but they're like, well, you know, oh no, like, never mind, you wouldn't get it anyway. And they want you to be like, no, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's extremely performative.
Absolutely. And I think the thing with casting Henry Thomas, Flanagan told him, he said, look, you're a very likable guy.
Yeah. Well, we talked about
And-
this with Justin Long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
And-
it's really subverting, you know.
yeah, and it's tricking the audience because when I saw him get out of the car,
You're like, oh,
yeah, Henry Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was excited. I was happy. But it really is that subversion, and it tricks your own
Yeah.
preconceived ideas of the characters that Henry Thomas plays.
yeah. And just like
Right.
we talked about the other week, it's very effective
It
because
is.
it really knocks you on your ass. But Jessie looks startled, and Tom immediately says that it was just a silly idea from a silly old man. He was just thinking about how happy those times were, but now she's a grown woman, too big to sit on Daddy's lap. He says that he just misses his little girl sometimes. Jessie looks back at the eclipse, almost halfway done, before she looks back at her father and tells him that she's not too big. She gets up and sits on Tom's lap. He kisses her shoulder and tells her that he loves her, and she says the same before returning her attention to the eclipse. The radio begins to play Bring It On Home to Me by Sam Cooke.
So that, to me, I feel like it's an intermingling of memories in Jessie's mind, present day, past, everything. I don't think that this is actually playing on the radio.
I took it as that it was, and that's why she turned it off in the car.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's how I took it.
That's what I thought.
I thought because she's asleep right now.
Yeah.
And she's reliving this in a dream.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if, you know how dreams work.
Yeah, you watch something and then you dream about
Exactly.
it. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, or
And
you're
it's part of
dancing
it.
to your
Yeah.
alarm that's ringing. And now you're like, for
Why?
what?
Yeah. That's, the brain shouldn't work like that.
It really shouldn't. But that's how I took it, was that even subconsciously she just switched it off. And he's like, no, you don't like it? She's like, oh, no, I'm just enjoying the view.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a fair point.
It's a hell of a view.
God damn it.
Now back to the horror.
Yeah.
The sky is bathed in a strange red light as the eclipse is almost in totality. Jessie comments that it's just amazing, but Tom is intensely focused on his daughter's shoulder in front of him as we hear the unmistakable metallic clinging of his belt. Jessie tells him that he's missing it, but he says for her to just keep watching. They are both bathed in red light now. Tom begins to move beneath her, and Jessie looks scared. She calls out to him, but he only repeats that she just keep watching the eclipse. It is in totality now, completely black with an eerie red rim around it. Jessie wakes up in the bed.
So I have no words for how horrible that was.
Yeah.
Very
There aren't any.
difficult, uncomfortable. Honestly, even with the Moonlight Man, this is the most horrific thing in the film.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the eclipse because it's a very interesting visual. Obviously, eclipse, that's not really what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting for them to use the red the way that they do. And the color red is really not used in the film at all, unless it's blood or unless it's
That's
that.
true.
Okay.
And so it really makes it that much more striking. Flanagan had said on commentary that the attempt was to make it surreal so that it almost distracts you from the
What's
true
happening?
horror
Yeah.
of the situation, that you're kind of almost in overload visually.
Yeah.
I did also want to point out, because it is very important, Flanagan said on commentary, the child actress, it was a closed set, so it was only Flanagan, Michael Fiminari, the cinematographer, and Henry Thomas, the child actress, and the child actress's mother.
Good.
And so at any point, if it was too anything, the mother could step in. It was very,
Good.
very properly handled, because this is probably one of the worst things we've ever talked about on the show.
Yeah.
For sure. And I don't want to dwell on it too long. I just, having read the book, I'm like, how far are we going?
Right.
Yeah.
And still, I was just at a loss for words. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and just everything leading up to it. Like, again, I'm not going to stay here for very long.
Good.
But just good. But just the fact that he's the things that he's saying are such, for the most part, things that dads say, but it's wrong somehow. And you feel that, and it snowballs into something horrific.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's incredibly upsetting.
And having Henry Thomas, again,
Exactly.
it's
Your
that-
expectation of him. Yeah.
it's just horrible. And I mean, but knowing the proper precautions are taken
Yeah.
off screen,
Yeah.
it helps a little.
Yeah.
But it's still fucking horrible.
No, it's awful. But back in the bed, Jessie is sunk down in her sleep and her arms are raised above her. She immediately begins to groan in pain as she rises back up. Flies swirl around Gerald's body on the floor, and the dog is back in the doorway. Jessie's hands are purple as they hang from the cuffs. Free Jessie sits next to the window and tells her that they need circulation. She's been hanging on them all night. Jesse tries to move them, clearly in pain and remarking that her hands burn. Suddenly, her legs curl up and she begins to kick them on the bed. Free Jesse identifies the pain as cramps and Jesse screams. Free Jesse assures her that the cramps will pass if she pedals her legs and gets the blood flowing. She follows instructions, pedaling her legs on the bed, and we see from a view across the room that she is alone in her room with Gerald dead splayed out in front of the bed. Once she begins to calm down, the dog sets his head back down.
Flanagan had said in commentary that when you see Carla Gugino in the handcuffs, she's in the handcuffs
Oof.
and has been. They would try to give her breaks between takes.
Yeah.
And thankfully, see, that's the other thing is they had a very, very intricate shot list, him and Michael Fiminari, and they would try to pace it out to where there were some shots where you don't see her arms at all, and she's really just holding silk ties.
Good.
Okay.
So give her a little bit of a break.
God damn.
Flanagan said that he tried it himself because he was like, I don't want to make her do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
Yeah.
He said he lasted 6 minutes.
Oh my
Fuck, I bet though.
Yeah. Like unbelievable.
Agony.
That would fucking suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to think like 2 weeks ago you didn't have this
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
And now you're like, no, you're gonna.
This is gonna fucking suck.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
But Jessie takes a drink of water with her makeshift straw and puts everything back up on the shelf as Free Jessie watches over her. She catches her breath and looks down at the flies at the foot of the bed. Suddenly, Gerald is next to her, commenting on her bad dreams. He says she never told him about the eclipse, and Jessie says that she never told anyone. Gerald says that a marriage is telling each other the difficult things, but Jessie says not that one. Gerald remarks, no wonder it didn't work out. Jessie says that it wasn't relevant to them, but Free Jessie has another opinion. She says that she married an older man. Tom was a lawyer, and so was Gerald. Tom minimized and objectified her, and Gerald pipes in to tell her not to forget about his drinking problem. Free Jessie, with the smirk, tells him that if he had a drinking problem, it's cured now. So this is on, what'd you say, ABC?
Yeah.
I was in my head. I was like, "This is another sitcom moment."
What the fuck?
Don't go there.
She turns to Jessie and tells her that she married into the only dynamic that she's ever known. She was a girl and he was a man. She never walked away from the eclipse, and the afternoon never ended. Jessie asks if it's really not enough that she has to be here on this bed, but they're making her be there too. Free Jessie recalls that Jessie had just gotten her first period the month before. She proposes that maybe that's what got him going. He smelled the blood and did what dogs do.
The writing again is great with the dog metaphor.
Yeah,
It's just again, it's so horrific that it's like
it's awful.
just terrible.
Yeah.
She gestures toward the dog, saying that he's every man that Jessie has ever known. He had Kobe ribeye, which was good until he found Gerald, just like Tom was fine with Sally until Jessie. She brings up all of Gerald's late night phone calls and mystery work trips. What was he really doing? She says she ignored it, but his hunger for her had faded, and a dog's gotta eat. I'm like, Gerald, you're not going to be like, no, I wasn't. He doesn't say anything.
Well, it's still Jesse.
I know.
Yeah.
I
So
know,
he's
but
like,
still.
yeah, that's probably.
I probably was. Jessie says that she handled it, but Free Jessie says it's just like she handled sitting on her dad's lap. Jessie begins to cry and make excuses for her father, saying that he never touched her, only himself. Even Gerald is hit by this. She says that if you want to blame someone, you could blame her mother, the boat, or the short sundress. She says that what her father did to her isn't the worst thing anyone has ever done. This is gut-wrenching.
Yeah, it's hard to even.
Yeah.
Free Jessie agrees, saying that the worst thing is what he did after, in the bedroom. Gerald asks what he did, and Jessie tells him that Tom didn't do anything. He just talked to her. Gerald surmises that Tom didn't do anything on the swing. He didn't do anything in the room either. It might as well have just been a bad dream. Jessie looks up at Gerald and says that she did have a dream that night. There was a woman standing over a deep well looking down into it. Jessie dreamed that she was in the well looking up at the woman. The sky was dark with the eclipse behind the woman, and she remembers the smell in the well, like pennies and oysters. She says that the woman stood there in a red dress looking right at her. Gerald asks what was in the well, and Jesse replies in a whisper, secrets. Gerald agrees, so many secrets. Free Jesse says that Jesse thought her dreams could go down there too, in the darkness of the well. Gerald asks who the woman was, and Jesse says she thought it may have been her. She could tell just by looking at her that she would never tell. She would die before she told, and Jesse figured she could do that too. She says she doesn't even know why she thought of that because it was just a dream. Now,
Yes.
the woman isn't her, it's Dolores Claiborne. And again, like, I can't recommend reading Gerald's Game enough. Can't recommend reading Dolores Claiborne. Or if you're into audiobooks, Frances Sternhagen reads it, and she is fucking phenomenal.
All right.
Just listen to it. It's great. But there's this, without giving anything away, there's this like kind of magical moment where the two stories meet each other because they're both happening in the path of the eclipse.
That's incredible.
Okay.
It is phenomenal. That's why I tweeted at Mike Flanagan to please give us a Dolores Claiborne because this really felt like, I mean, come on, just don't tease it.
You remember whenever I couldn't remember what that film was about and I said it was about a land deal or something? I was wrong, clearly.
You were wrong. You're very wrong.
But I think it would have been interesting if they were like, well, who's the woman up in the well? And she's like, you know, Kathy Bates. You ever seen Kathy
Misery?
Bates? about Schmidt.
But she says that it was a dream, and Gerald muses, like the man in the corner. Jesse agrees. He was definitely a bad dream. But Gerald chuckles, saying that he doesn't know, but she can tell herself that if she wants. While he's talking, a fly lands on his lip and crawls into his mouth. He runs his tongue across his tooth, and the fly buzzes away. I was like,
Well, I thought he ate it at first. I was like, oh my God.
Gerald, you nasty.
Yeah, your appetite changes when you You'll have that to look forward to or whatever, since he's being such an asshole.
Yeah.
He really is. But Jesse maintains that he was just a trick of the mind, just like Gerald and Free Jesse are. Gerald asks why she's afraid to look over there for more than a second then. Jesse is getting more and more upset, and Free Jesse asks her why she's still listening to him, but Jesse only shushes her. She cranes her neck to look over the bed, where there seems to be a bloody footprint between where the dog lies in the doorway and Gerald's body at the foot of the bed. Jesse offers that it's probably from the dog, but Gerald points out that it's too big for that, and he implores her to look again.
Well, then the dog wore one of your shoes.
Obviously, that's
That's
what
the
it
only
was.
thing. He seems to be doing whatever he wants to do, so wouldn't put it past him.
Jesse begins to cry, but she does look. She looks at the print on the floor, and Gerald tells her that he thinks it's a footprint, and if it is, but Jesse tells him to shut up. Gerald finishes anyway. It was death she saw, and he'll be back tonight. And after she dies, he'll have her wedding ring in his case with the rest of his pretty things, his souvenirs.
His used bones.
His used bones. His gently used bones.
Can you even bring me new ones?
Yeah, goddamn.
Jesse has had enough. She says she's going to close her eyes and count to 10, and when she opens them, they'll both be gone. Free Jesse tells her not to do it and to stay awake. She insists that she is awake, but she closes her eyes and counts down from 10. When she gets to 1 and opens them, she's looking at herself in the lake house on that horrible day when she was 12 years old. Young Jessie stands in front of the mirror in her bedroom, looking at herself before changing her clothes. She lays the sundress out on her bed, now wearing a sweater and jeans. Tom stands in the doorway and asks if she's all right. Jessie doesn't answer, but turns around to look at him. He tells her that he's so sorry, and he goes over to her, but she takes a step back. He sits down on her bed and asks her to sit beside him. Reluctantly, she does. They both sit facing forward before Tom says that he's sorry that she was there when but he quickly says it's not like he touched her, which is literally what she said earlier.
Just so sad.
When Jessie doesn't answer or look at him, he says that maybe they should tell her mother. Tears on her face, Jessie looks at him, fear-stricken. He says that he thinks that they have to. He'd really hate to because things have been so tense between Jessie and her mother lately. Honestly, things have been tense between Sally and Tom too because of the baby, but this could make things a lot worse. Jessie begins to cry harder, but Tom offers that she won't think that it's Jessie's fault. Well, he's pretty sure that she won't. I mean, she might, but they'll know that it wasn't her fault. This whole scene makes me literally sick to my stomach.
Yeah, and I think it's also because of the performances of both actors.
Yes.
They're doing brilliantly with this horrible material.
Yeah.
And the material, the content.
Yes.
No, yeah.
Mike Flanagan steams a good ham, but this is
awful.
fucking
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
Jessie chews on her fingernails for a second before proposing that maybe they shouldn't tell her. Tom says that they have to. Jessie asks why. And lying on the bed, her head tilted severely to one side and her hands still locked in cuffs, Jessie whispers, "Because you can't keep it a secret." Back in the past at the lake house, Tom says the same thing. If it's ever going to come out, it needs to happen now, not in a week, a year, or 10 years. Jessie asks him please and promises that she won't tell. And Tom feigns reluctance and says that if they don't tell her mother today, they can never tell anyone. In the present, Jessie promises that she won't. And in the past, she promises her father the same. Tom continues, she can't just keep it from her mom. She can't tell anyone. And that's a huge responsibility for a little girl, a young woman, which is disgusting because she was a grown woman earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And now when it suits him to, it just makes me so mad.
It makes me very angry.
Yeah.
Yes.
He says that she might be tempted to tell her friends if one of them tells her a secret. And she might even want to tell her brother or sister. But Jessie interrupts him. No, she'll never tell. She promises and swears. But Tom says again that maybe it's best that they both take their medicine now. Shining reference. Take a shot. It's not like Sally can kill them. Jessie cries, begging him please not to tell her. She says she'll never tell anyone. Tom says that he's never been able to refuse her anything that she wanted, so he agrees. They'll try things her way. Manipulation on fucking 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just awful. I did want to call out the interplay between different time periods.
Yeah.
The editing of that is brilliant, and as usual, the editor was Mike Flanagan.
That's like an ace for him. Like, he always knows how to, like, we talked about this in Oculus.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Just dip back and forth. Haunting of Hill House, I mean, is a prime example.
Yes. He was talking about how whenever they were filming this, they filmed obviously these two horrible scenes first.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever they had them, he's editing them as they're filming everything else. And so he has them to show to Carla Gugino.
Oh, wow.
And so she is able to watch them and commit them to memory as if they are a memory and use them for her performance.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just very smartly done.
That's genius. But cuffed to the bed, Jessie says, "Thank you, Daddy." Tom sits next to her on the bed and outlines their deal. They both say nothing, not to anyone and not even to each other. Once they walk out of this room, it never happened. Jessie agrees. Tom finally turns away from her, overcome with emotion suddenly, and says that he did a shameful thing. Jessie realizes that he looked away when he said that. He could lie to her face, but he had to turn away to finally tell the truth. Back in the lake house bedroom, Tom is still turned away from his daughter. He says that he doesn't know what came over him and he blames it on the eclipse. He thanks God that they'll never see another one. Don't blame the shit on the eclipse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not at all.
He looks back at Jessie and repeats that nothing happened. Nothing ever happened. He stands up casually and says for them to get grilling because the rest of the family will be back in a bit. He leaves, and Jessie collapses backward on her bed, on top of her sundress. Her arms are splayed out wide in a position that will become all too familiar to her when she's older.
I did also want to kind of call out that the arm position because it feels almost like the Jesus Christ pose.
Yeah.
And with Mike Flanagan's background, I thought possibly it's a signifier of that she is dying for his sins.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
But I didn't know if I should say that.
I just thought it was a parallel between the handcuffs and the...
Right.
I mean, it could be both.
Yeah.
Damn. There's a strange licking sound, and Jessie sits up confused. At the end of the bed, the moonlight man clutches onto her feet, licking one of them. His face is bathed in shadows, but his eyes shine brightly with twin eclipses.
the repetition of that eclipse
Yeah.
is such a smart visual thing. I don't even know what to call it, but it's brilliant.
This wakes adult Jessie from her memories, and she realizes that it's the dog licking her foot.
Oh, punk ass dog.
Dude,
let me die and then eat me. Fuck you gonna
I know you can't wait.
Yeah.
There's plenty of Gerald left.
Yeah, no shit.
You fucking asshole. Now I'm mad. Now I'm mad at the dog.
Right? Look at the cake. He landed on his stomach. Go eat his ass. What are you doing?
He's been working out for 8 weeks.
Yeah. No shit.
Those glutes.
It's lean muscle.
She kicks him in the face, which only pisses him off, and he jumps back on the bed and takes a bite out of Crime. And by Crime, I mean her calf.
But Crime earlier meant...
It's different now.
Okay.
Yeah.
She kicks him away again, and he watches her, whining. Almost as an act of defiance, he rips a piece of flesh away from Gerald and goes back to his spot in the doorway to eat it. He's like, well, I already fucking had food anyway. You're not depriving me of anything. Gerald comes over to tell her calmly that the dog is going to try that again because she's fresher meat. She's strong enough to kick now, but she won't be for long, and the dog knows it. He can smell it. He looks out the window and comments that it's afternoon already. The sun is about to go down, and no one came this morning. Maybe they did, but she was asleep. He assures her that someone will eventually find her, but it might take a long time. He says that the first thing people will think is that they're off on a wild romantic fling. Jessie smiles at this a little, and Gerald says, why wouldn't they think that? Only they know what it really was. To the rest of the world, they looked perfect. He says that soon people, his people, will come looking for them. There are some women back in New Orleans that Jessie calls her friends, but she never really let them into her life. So they won't notice if she dropped out of sight for a week or 10 days, but he has appointments. Questions will be raised when he's not back by Friday, and that's when they'll start looking. He gets in bed next to her and says that he thinks it'll be the caretaker that finds their bodies. He'll either see her through the window and call the cops, or maybe he'll just smell them.
Gerald, I think we're going to revoke your speaking privileges. Like, this is like...
You get back in my head and shut the fuck up. He says the caretaker will turn away while he throws a blanket on her so he doesn't have to see her fingers sticking out of the handcuffs, stiff as pencils and white as candles. Worse than that, he won't want to see the expression of horror on her face. Jessie asks why he's doing this to her, but he just continues. He talks about the paramedics who will come and wince at her and agree amongst themselves that the woman on the bed died hard. But they won't know the half of it, and they won't know the real reason her eyes are staring and her mouth is screaming is because of what she saw coming out of the dark at the end.
I love the stiff as pencils, white as candles.
Yeah.
That is a great line. I also want to talk about the camera slowly pressing in and tilting. It's like, it's so smart. When you have a whole film basically taking place in one place,
Yeah.
all these different shot compositions,
Yeah.
constantly just keeping it interesting.
Yes.
But Gerald needs to shut the fuck up.
He says that she'll have an autopsy and they'll inspect her stomach contents and her brain. But in the end, they'll call it death by misadventure. They'll think they were playing a harmless game and the man had a heart attack and the woman was left and she died hard. He says that maybe someone will notice her wedding ring is gone, but if they look for it at all, they won't look long. They won't notice one of her bones. Maybe just the third phalange in her right foot is gone, but they'll know. They'll know he took them because what she saw was death. And she saw him just like people who die in lonely places do. And when the sun goes down tonight, he'll be back.
Did anybody else get goosebumps there?
Like, why though, man?
Terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm still alive right now. Why?
Right now.
Yeah, yeah, but still, it's like, I'll call you when I'm ready. You don't gotta.
You don't need
Yeah.
to do this
Hey,
right
keep
now.
checking on me.
Yeah, come on, dude. I'll make an appointment.
Yeah.
Jessie begins to sing the Mockingbird song, but stops with the calm realization that she's going to die. Gerald tells her that everything dies. All things serve the beam. Dark Tower.
Mm-hmm.
I got chills when I watched this the first time. I was like,
Well, no, all things do serve the
they
beam.
do serve the beam. Jessie starts to sing again and says again that she's going to die. She continues singing, and Gerald says that he'll come quicker that way, and she won't need to wait all night for the Moonlight Man. She starts to say again, I'm going to, but Gerald is now Tom, and he finishes her sentence. Sleep. She's going to sleep. Jessie starts to sing again before dozing off, and it cuts to black. The eclipse burns bright red and ominous over the lake as Jessie stands in front of the swing where she once sat with her father. She goes into the house and finds her 12-year-old self sitting on her bed wearing the sundress. She walks over to her and sees that her hands are cuffed in front of her. Jessie apologizes and her younger self tells her that she doesn't need to be sorry. She just wants her to remember. Jessie tells her that she remembers everything. Every shame-filled glance that Tom gave her, Sally looking at it all but not seeing anything. Young Jessie tells her calmly that that's not what she's talking about, but Jessie continues. Sally seeing what happened meant Maddie was also doomed, so it was up to her to protect Maddie, even if it meant never feeling like part of the family ever again. Tears roll down young Jessie's face as Jessie continues that wasn't her job. Her job was to be a kid, and suddenly she didn't have that option anymore. Young Jessie tells her that she's had everything she's needed to survive since the very beginning. That's what she needs to remember.
I feel like they could stand to be a little less vague with herself. Well, fucking free Jess, as you call.
Yeah.
She was like, no, you were glad he had the drink or whatever.
Right?
It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Time is of the essence.
Right.
Tell me. Did I swallow a handcuff key and I don't remember?
Spell it out.
Yes.
She says not the sun or the eclipse, afterwards. She smiles up at her older self. The night of the eclipse, the whole family eats dinner in the dining room. Sally and the younger kids are talking about how much fun they had on the boat. Tom says that it was beautiful here too and that they had fun. He gets up and kisses his wife's head while caressing her pregnant belly. Sally asks Jessie if she had a good time with her dad, and the glass Jessie's holding in her hand suddenly crumbles from her squeezing it. She's bleeding and the glass is embedded in her palm. Sally starts to get up, but Tom sits her back down and rushes to his daughter. Sally looks at the two of them, very concerned, as Jessie apologizes. Tom rushes her out of the room, but in slow motion, we see Jessie look back at her mother, her expression haunted. The light above Sally, James, and Maddie turns off, and everything is in black again. In the bathroom, Tom wraps up her palm and tells her that she'll live. He asks if she's okay, and she flatly says that she is. Tom just advises her to be careful. Jessie opens her eyes on the bed again and sees her younger self as Tom wraps her hand in her own bathroom. He says the last thing he wants is to have to take her to the emergency room to get her fingers sewn back on. The light goes off over them in the bathroom, and Jessie looks up at the shelf above her. Now, in the book, they were making like smoked glass to look at the eclipse from.
Uh-huh.
And that's what he was like warning her to be careful with or whatever. The whole glass breaking scene didn't happen. But I think it's super effective, especially like her bringing her mom into it and saying like it was here, but you didn't see it. But free Jessie appears by her bedside, advising her that it's going to fucking hurt. Jessie counters that the thing about blood is that it's as slick as oil until it clots.
As someone who did not read the book, I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
What's going to hurt?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Gerald is at the foot of the bed now, sternly telling Jessie that this is not going to work. Jessie says it might not, but the wrists have fewer nerves than the other checkpoints in the body. That's why it's the best way to... But when Gerald interrupts and asks how she knows so much about that, she doesn't answer. Free Jessie warns her that if she cuts too deep, she'll bleed to death. Jessie says that if she doesn't do it, she's dead anyway, whether by seizures, dehydration, the dog, or her visitor with his bag of bones. Another Stephen King reference. I just got to say, Bag of Bones made me sob my fucking face off. I told Mom that I was going to read it, and she was like, it's really sad. And I was like, I'm going to read it. And so I read it, and I texted her, and I was like, it was really sad. I was like crying. She was like, I told you.
Yeah, you were warned.
I don't listen. But speaking of the visitor, Gerald tells her that the sun is coming down and that he'll be back soon. It's like, what are you, the hall monitor? Like, what are you can fucking stop.
Is he texting you? What the fuck? Tell him not to come.
He said the phone was dead.
Yeah. I see you over there. Who is at the Moonlight Man? You're on Twitter, you son of a bitch.
Get me out of here. Jessie tries to lift her arm to reach the glass, but her wrists are bruised purple and she can barely lift them. Gerald takes this as a sign that she can't do this, but Jessie says that she doesn't need to move them much. Gerald points out that her legs won't be reliable after not using them for a day and a half. But this just makes Jessie laugh. She says that if her hands pull this off, her legs better do their fucking part.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
You better, motherfucker.
For real.
Yeah. I'm talking to you, legs.
Yeah.
You listening?
Gerald looks over at Free Jessie out of excuses. She accepts Jessie's decision and tells her to visualize the whole thing. Jessie does, lifting her hand up to the glass and bringing it back down. She looks over at the phone on her nightstand and then at the handcuff key on the bathroom counter. Free Jessie says that her body is already dehydrated, so once this starts, it all needs to go very quickly. She starts to say that if anything goes wrong, but Jessie finishes. It doesn't matter. She says goodbye and starts to sob. Jessie takes a moment to collect herself and she raises her hand up to the glass. It shakes as she brings it back down. She dumps out the water, which I'm sure really hurt to do.
But that just shows, in all honesty, I feel like that's the faith that she has in herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
It's like
is
it's
it.
going to work.
Yeah. But when she notices the dog taking interest in her from the doorway, she tells him to stay right there. He licks his chops, but he obeys. Jessie raises the glass back up to the shelf and counts to 3 before shattering it. She's able to hold the base in her hand along with shards. There's glass embedded in her palm, but she's able to dump the base and stick a shard in the side of the shelf. With the glass supported by the shelf fully, she presses her wrist against it. Jessie screams in pain as she drags her wrist across the glass, spilling blood down her arm. It flows beneath the cuff, but Jessie continues to cut into her wrist. She continues to scream as she brings down her hand and tries to force it out of the cuff. She pulls her wrist down as the filleted skin from her hand pushes against it. We watch as Jessie gruesomely degloves herself, but after what feels like forever, the cuff clinks against the bed, bloody and empty. Mike Flanagan hates hands. I just got to say that right off the rip. This is so gruesome. I cannot watch it without physically reacting to it. It is so hard to look at.
Yeah. You've been through enough.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I understood, but oh man,
It's gruesome.
My notes say this is one of the most gruesome things I've ever seen.
Literally.
And it's so detailed. There's parts of the hand I don't need to know about that I saw that I'll never forget. I think the thing was for me is that I imagine anybody that's read the book probably was looking toward this scene, waiting for it. And so he had to deliver.
yeah.
Because if you don't deliver the goods, and I'm sure it was probably described in even more gruesome detail.
I just didn't. I can't even talk. There's a difference between what you can imagine yourself and you're like, oh, when you're reading the book. And he forces you to experience this with her. Like, we watch it happen.
Yeah, well, sometimes I look away. I'm going to be honest. I experienced it the first time.
That was enough.
I think I feel
That
like
was enough.
Yeah.
But I did watch it fully last night because I wanted to see the detail, especially learning Robert Kurtzman was the makeup guy. They had said that they slid a prosthetic hand over Carla Gugino's hand. And so whenever they're doing that, as it's starting to come apart, they're actually pulling at it with fishing lines.
Oh my God.
And the parts of her hand that look like skeletal muscle, that's her real hand underneath.
Hell yeah.
It doesn't look like it.
No, not
it
at all.
doesn't.
So she's basically, it like literally is a degloving.
Degloving,
Yeah.
So she's taking off this very, very disgusting glove.
That's brilliant.
But they had said that whenever they did the world premiere of this film, the audience, of course, went like bonkers over it. Somebody even fainted from watching it, which I get.
a lot.
It's intense.
Yeah.
It's intense.
But I think they said there were very, very minor digital enhancements, but everything else is practical.
Man, it looks good.
Yes, it does.
It's one
gruesome.
of the greatest, worst effects I've ever seen in my life.
Yes. But Jessie looks down at her ruined hand and snaps into action. She stands and pushes the bed closer to her nightstand so she can reach the phone with her foot. She presses the home button, but Gerald was right. It is dead. She stands and pulls the bed with her until she can reach the bathroom counter. She reaches the key, but her hand is shaking so uncontrollably bad that she drops it again. She lets out a frustrated cry and picks it back up, holding it in her mouth and unlocking the cuff that way. Jessie is now completely free from the bed. She runs into the bathroom and drinks from the tap before digging through the drawers to find pads to wrap around her wrist and hand. I was like, that is fucking genius.
That's
honestly.
When I was watching it, that was my first thing. I was like, you're fucking smart.
You are
I would
so
have
smart.
never thought to do that.
know.
Nope.
Panting, she starts the impossible journey across the room to get the keys off the dresser, but she passes out.
They had said that right here was supposed to be another scene, and they actually did film it.
Mm-hmm.
It was Jessie at her father's deathbed, and it
Okay.
was that entire scene. How it plays out, I don't know. But they said that there was something with the makeups and prosthetics to make Henry Thomas look older that Flanagan didn't really like anymore
Yeah.
whenever it came time for the editing. And then he also said that if we put that scene right here, the momentum is dead.
Yeah.
So we need to just keep going. And he made the right choice.
He
Yeah.
did. I wonder what that entailed, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I can't imagine she got any closure.
Is that in the book?
I don't think so.
Well, then it's good it's not here.
I could be wrong.
Okay.
But she wakes up to the dog growling as he tries to chew on her wrapped hand.
That's when it's a puppet.
Yeah.
Doesn't that dog have anywhere else to be? Like,
No shit.
Jesus Christ.
What did you do before we got here?
How's that possum doing, man? Like, go find. Jeez, man.
She's able to smack him away, but she realizes that she has passed out right next to Gerald. The dog really has had his fill of him. Pieces of flesh missing from his chest, and for the first time I noticed, a large piece of his head.
Yes.
An ear is gone. He is now gray, too. She gets back up onto her feet, and we see that it's completely night now. She walks very carefully to the dresser and snatches up her keys. She presses the fob, and the car outside beeps, but this relief is short-lived when the dog starts to growl. Jessie looks over at him, and he begins to whimper and run away into the bathroom.
Isn't
Like,
it-
you want to be fucking all in the mix
Yeah.
when things are fine, but now you're going to run away.
Trying to eat me and shit.
Yes.
I think my thing about it that is so like startling is that he's like, no, I'm cool with you guys.
Yeah.
But this dude, I don't like anything about this dude.
If you're gonna eat me, at least protect me. Protect
Yes.
your meal.
Yeah.
Fight back. Earn this
Honestly,
meal.
seriously.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're trying to eat your dinner and somebody's like, excuse me.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Right? No.
What?
Right? You want this hand, dog?
Yeah.
They're gonna go fight.
Yeah. No, use your hand to direct him to the
Yeah.
moonlight man.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Go.
Yes, but
Get him out of here.
no.
I don't like anything about this. You know, I'm away in the bathroom until
Yeah.
he leaves.
Let me know how it all shakes out, and then we'll talk about dinner.
Jessie stands in the doorway to the bedroom, and at the end of the dark hall is the moonlight man. She walks toward him slowly, bringing us closer and closer as she whispers to him that he's only made of moonlight. She repeats this as a mantra as she eyes the jewelry he wears around his neck, decorated with bones and a human ear, as well as a rook skull, which is another huge Dark Tower reference.
You love to see it.
Yes.
I still need to finish the Dark Tower.
Yes, please. But with her shaking, wrapped hand, she pulls off her wedding ring and drops it into the moonlight man's waiting one. Jessie leaves the house as the diamond glitters in the moonlight. We cut to her car flying as it backs out of the driveway. But before she can drive away, she sees Gerald, fully clothed, standing in the yard of the house. He gives her a sad smile as he waves at her solemnly, and Jessie gets the hell out of there.
I will say, oddly, even though I hate Gerald tremendously,
It was a sad moment.
it was sad to see
Yeah.
his fucking
Yeah.
Force ghost or whatever. Like, just thinking
He's
about,
Obi-Wan.
I mean, thinking about the hope that Jesse probably had for the relationship,
Yeah.
what he could have meant,
Yeah.
and then this is how everything ends.
New Hope.
Sad.
Yeah, New Hope. That's what she's heading towards.
The car races down the road, but she has to do her best not to pass out behind the wheel. She's struggling with this, and when she nods off, she swerves off the forest road and nearly runs into a tree. She pleads with herself to stay awake just a little longer, but from our view in front of the car, the headlights dim.
Just brilliant.
Yeah. When Jessie lifts her head again to look through the windshield, she's bathed in a red light and the eclipse burns in the sky. She stares up at it, but when she looks in the rearview mirror, the Moonlight Man sits in the back seat, twin eclipses burning in his eyes. She quietly and calmly says, "Oh no." The Moonlight Man leans forward toward her seat and wraps a large arm around her. He brings his lips right next to her ear and whispers, "Mouse." As soon as he does, we're in the real world again. It's still night and Jessie crashes headfirst into a tree.
So for the visuals of that little nightmare,
Yeah.
amazing. That's one of my favorite sequences in the whole film. I did want to talk about that car crash because on commentary, Flanagan said that they had a stunt woman driving, and whenever she went to brake, because the thing was is that this was a test. This is a test run.
Okay.
And they're like, well, let's roll on it anyway, just in case we get some angles that we can use.
Yeah.
And so she goes to do it, and the brakes fail on the
Oh
car.
my
no.
God.
And so the only car that they have to do this with, that's it.
Yeah.
And so the crash was way worse than what they had planned.
Yeah.
She was okay, thankfully.
Yeah.
But this was not what was supposed to happen.
Okay, because I was like, damn, she got fucked
Yeah,
up.
it
And
was bad.
There are shots later that we do see, and Jess is not as banged
No,
up
Yeah.
as she would have been. And he's like, fuck, we filmed that first.
Yeah.
And so they just had to use it.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my God, because that impact is jarring.
Yeah.
But it sells the edit of that cut.
It does.
So it's like, accidents. It was
Happy
accident. I mean, it
accident?
was not really, but
Happy-ish accident.
it was an accident.
Yeah.
It was just
was
an
just an
accident.
Just a regular kind of accident.
Yes, period.
But lights come on in a house hidden in the trees. Jessie is motionless behind the wheel, bloodied from the crash, but she wakes up coughing. She looks over at the house where people have come out to investigate with flashlights. She slams down on the horn and the flashlights turn in her direction. As people from the house come toward her, Jessie gets out of the car and is only able to say hi before passing out. The next thing we see is Jessie's gloved hand reaching into a desk to retrieve paper. It still shakes as she grabs her pen, but she brings it to the paper. She begins to write a letter, explaining that she's using her right hand and its frictionless burn glove. She says it still doesn't work quite right after 3 skin graft surgeries and it hurts to write, but maybe this letter should hurt to write. We see Jessie being tended to at a hospital as she continues that everyone accepted her amnesia at face value, which made sense. Trauma makes people block out memories. Everyone knows that, and no one better than her. We see her at a meeting with lawyers from Gerald's firm who were able to keep the details out of the papers. The coroner declared that Gerald died of a heart attack, which had been a long time coming. They're like, dude was jacked. His heart was like a hummingbird.
But we can all agree he was ripped as fuck.
Yeah.
It's like, is that proper lawyer conversation?
No
Can you
shit.
just sign the paper, please?
She says that the insurance paid and the headlines faded and life became a new normal. We see Jessie in bed, tossing and turning from nightmares, as she admits that it wasn't a new normal. It was never normal. Red light glows over her as she tries to sleep, but she sits up and sees him standing between the windows of her bedroom, the Moonlight Man, and his glowing eclipse eyes. He holds out his case to her, filled with bones and jewelry and a handcuff.
Again, amazing.
Yeah.
It looks so, and it's awful, but it looks fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's terrible. I'm
sorry.
yes.
Jessie curls up in the bed sobbing, and the letter continues that if he wasn't keeping her up at night, it was the fact that in all the reports or all the searches of the house, they never found her wedding ring. Now at her desk, she stops to tend to her aching hand. The letter continues that what got her through those nights was the person that she's writing to, thinking of her and why she came to her that day. We see young Jessie standing in front of the swing, staring up at the eclipse outside of the lake house. She describes her as living in a sunless world, always on that swing. Young Jessie turns back to look at us. Jessie, in her slip, walks in on Tom knelt before young Jessie in her bedroom. He snaps a pair of cuffs onto her wrists, and she explains that Tom's shackles were silence. We see Jesse and Gerald on their wedding day. As he slides the ring onto her finger, she says that Gerald's shackles were comfort. We see Jesse talking with teenage girl, played by Dory Lumpkin. She says that her days were better. She started a foundation for kids like them. Since she spent so long never telling her story, she made sure that she told it. And she tells it every day to every kid that it could help.
I don't know why I think it's the way the camera sweeps the Newton Brothers piano and obviously her performance. But when that scene lit happened, it gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
No, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
She's a fucking hero.
Yeah.
We see her beginning to tell her story to the teenage girl, but we cut to her sitting in the middle of her bed. She says that all that during the day didn't help her at night, waiting for the Moonlight Man to come and claim his runaway bride. We see her sitting outside, reading a paper and having coffee. She says that 6 months after everything happened was when she saw Raymond Andrew Joubert's picture in the paper. The headline reads, "Crypt Keeper Captured in Fairhope, Alabama." Jesse's hand trembles as she holds the paper.
I just got to say kudos to the newspapers because Crypt Creeper,
Yeah.
that's
Good.
great work.
She continues that the stories of graveyards being vandalized in Alabama started 2 years ago, but she never read about them in New Orleans. And it was on the radio.
Yes, and it ties that to that now.
Yes. They were tiny, buried stories anyway. Someone was breaking into small town cemeteries and stealing jewelry from the corpses. But as months went by, it escalated. In Louisiana, he defiled corpses, gouging eyes and slitting throats. Last February, he took 2 noses, then hands, then ears. I guess referring to Gerald's face, she says she always assumed that was the dog. And I didn't realize until this time that I was like, oh, fuck, that was Gerald's ear.
Yeah, we saw it.
Yeah, I didn't know until your sister showed me. I was like,
Yeah.
man.
He works quick because that
Yeah.
necklace was,
No, it was on point.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all right.
It was gross.
Yeah.
These old things.
Yeah.
It escalated to the level of him committing necrophilia on men that he found. She counts herself lucky in this regard. But when she saw him on the front page, it wasn't about a dead body. A man woke up to find Raymond Andrew Joubert in his room, naked and trying to cut off his ear. I cannot imagine, like, that is the scariest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Last week I said Maida attacking Hess with an axe was top 5 worst ways to wake up.
No.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and knock that down.
Yeah.
Let's put that up there.
She says that Joubert has acromegaly, which explains his appearance. We travel down the hallway back to the bedroom where Jesse was trapped, where Joubert stands. She says they went to his last known address, a farmhouse. He wasn't there, but his sister and her husband were. Joubert called them mommy and daddy. They were both scalped, and he had eaten most of his sister's husband. We watch as the police enter Joubert's home of horrors, where his sister and her husband sit propped up in chairs in the living room. She continues that there were 50 bell jars filled with ears, lips, and fingers. They think he could have killed as many as 12 people in the last 5 years, but Jesse notes that he spared her. We see that bloodstain that looks suspiciously like a footprint back in the bedroom. She says that this monster was as real as the cuffs and the dog, and as real as the eclipse. At her desk, Jessie holds the letter in her hands as we hear her finish reading it. She says that she had to write this letter to Mouse because she's the only person who would understand and the only one who truly matters. Jessie stands in front of the lake house now, looking up at the eclipse. Behind her, young Jessie sits on the swing and reads the rest out loud. She says that Joubert is being arraigned tomorrow and she's going to be there because the people who were supposed to protect them from the monsters turned out to be the monsters themselves, and it almost killed them. They say the last part together. Jessie tells her younger self that it's time for the sun to come out. After so long, they deserve the sun. The first time I saw this, I was like bawling by this part.
Well, it's very emotional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Multiple reporters broadcast from the steps outside the courthouse. One makes it a point to say that Joubert hasn't spoken a word since his arrest, not even to his public defender.
All right.
So, that was kind of funny.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wonder.
I wonder if
Yeah.
he's going to talk in there, you guys. Jessie walks into the courtroom as the county clerk, played by Mike Flanagan's sibling, Jamie Flanagan,
Yes.
reads
All
off
right.
the multiple counts against Joubert. Every time I see their name pop up, I'm like, ah!
Yeah.
I get excited.
Such a small cameo, too.
Yeah,
That's cool though.
very much. She tries to get Jobert's attention by saying, hey, but when no one acknowledges her, she says it again, louder. Everyone stops and turns toward her, including the judge, played by Gwendolyn McCann. Towering over everyone else with his hands cuffed in front of him, Jobert looks at Jessie and smiles. He tells her, you're not real. He raises his hands, breaking the cuffs between them and holding his arms wide, mocking the way Jessie had been stuck.
When he broke those, I was like, oh, I didn't know he could.
Yeah.
He's like, yo, you really didn't think you were keeping me here, right? Like,
I'm here because I want to be.
yeah.
Yeah.
He repeats himself, adding, you're only made of moonlight. Officers rush to cuff him behind his back, and Jessie advances toward him. As she stares at Jobert and he stares back at her, he suddenly becomes Tom. Then he's Gerald. Then he's Jobert again. With the entire courtroom staring at them behind her, Jessie walks up to Jobert and smiles. With a little laugh, she tells him that he's so much smaller than she remembers. He looks at her like, I'm fucking sorry? Like, what are you talking about?
I am 7 feet tall.
I'm 7 feet tall. I just broke these cuffs.
Yeah, with ease.
Man, and when they were reading off the charges, I was like, damn, he was acting a fool.
Yeah,
Well,
he
he
was wilding
was.
out.
He
Yeah.
made a lot of bad choices.
Made a lot of bad choices.
Yeah.
About sums it up.
He is going away for a long time.
But I think this is the last we're going to see of Jobert.
We can fucking hope so.
Jobert looks confused, but Jessie offers nothing else. She turns and walks out of the courtroom. Outside, she walks past the reporters and smiles. She puts on her sunglasses as a calm score plays, and she walks off down the street. The last traces of an eclipse disappear to reveal only a bright and shining sun in the sky above her. It cuts to black, and the credits roll. So, what did you guys think of Gerald's Game?
I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
There's some of the stuff in it that's hard to, stomach and whatever, but I do understand that it's necessary to tell the story. That it's the story. It's the movie, you know what I mean? It's fucking adaptation from the book, so you kind of got to do it. But it is done really good. And I don't normally like real world stuff, you know what I mean? But this is done so good. And then I did like a lot of the stuff that they did in this movie, and your sister would point out the differences from the book and this, and I've never read the book, but I like what's going on here. You know what I mean? I enjoy how this is being pulled off and told and explained. And again, I think watching all this dude's stuff now and then going back and seeing all these faces, it makes it a little better because I'm more familiar with them already.
Yeah.
Right. So I know this cast. I didn't before, but now I do. And it's like, oh, okay, I know this is going to be good because all of you guys are fucking fantastic at what you do.
It's like seeing your old friends.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it's heavy.
Yes.
But I did enjoy the shit out of this movie.
I really, really, really love this movie. I feel like it's Mike Flanagan not only showing what makes his adaptations great, but what makes him great as an original filmmaker.
Yeah.
So you see all these changes that are made for good reasons. We get more of that in Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is just such a great film. It's gruesome. It is tragic. It is emotionally exhausting at times.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly poignant and resonant.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know. It's also very well made.
Yeah.
The choices made, the lack of music and the music. When the music returns at the end, it's like it's uplifting again. And her telling her whole story. It's just like it just works so perfectly. I will say, I know that there's a lot of critiques about the ending. That's where a lot of people...
Really?
Yeah. Whenever I read reviews and even the novel, people think that the ending is like, what the fuck? Where'd this come from? But
about Jobert?
yeah, with the entire thing. And I'll be honest, the first time I saw the movie, it ends so perfectly for Jessie. I was afraid the last shot of the film was going to be her in bed with flies buzzing around her.
Oh my God.
Oh wow!
Because I'm like, this is so perfect.
You saying that gave me chills.
I'm sorry.
I would have fucking cried.
Like in the credits just roll around the buzzing noise or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I was afraid of. But
That's so sad.
Oh, it is. And I'm glad it didn't happen.
In the novel, she spits in his face.
In Jobert's face?
Yeah.
I'm glad she said words instead.
She spits in his face, and the letter that she's writing is to that friend whose voice she was hearing in her head that she
Yeah.
hasn't talked to since college or whatever.
All right.
I think it's a lot more powerful that she's writing it to Mouse, to young
Yeah.
Jesse.
And that connects everything thematically better.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And not only that, but also the line that she says to Jobert connects back to when they arrived at the house.
Yeah.
She said she thought the house was smaller.
Yep.
And he said it's because you're bigger. And this is her.
You're bigger.
Yes. It's great.
Yeah.
You know, and so I understand the critiques because it is a lot of reading and a lot of narration at the end.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and it may serve the character, and this is what they talked about in the commentary, it may serve the character better than it does the film, but the character deserves it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not complaining.
Like John Paul said earlier, she's been through enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give her this, and then seeing the eclipse,
Finish?
resolve,
Yeah.
and just become the sun. That's great.
Well, because like she said, you never walked away. Like you're still there.
Yeah.
And now she can. She's
And then
literally walking
She's
away.
fucking strutting into the sunlight.
Yeah. In a
And
very
she's-
cute dress.
They look good.
Yeah. I love this, obviously. It was literally like I said earlier, it felt like it was a personal gift. You guys already said everything basically. I mean, the music, the way that it's shot, the performances.
Yes.
It pulls so much out of you. Like you said, it is emotionally exhausting. I can't imagine like Carla Gugino literally I think when she's in the process of degloving herself or setting herself up to be degloved, her lips are like stuck together because they're so
Yes.
dry. It's like you want to look away. It's so horrible what her body is going through. I'm like, I don't have words.
It's bad.
It's
It is.
bad. It's really, really bad.
They said that was Elmer's, by the way.
Oh my God.
It works.
Something so
does.
simple.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
yeah.
And it did its job. But I mean, I think we can probably just go into ratings.
Sure.
Like I was just rambling before, I think this is one of the best adaptations I've ever seen. And not the fact that it's like 1000% faithful or anything, but the changes that were made suit the characters and suit the story. And you watch this, you love the novel, and then you watch this and you really can't ask for anything more. The Moonlight Man in my head was terrifying. He was so fucking scary. Even at the end when they're describing like his stature, terrifying. Seeing him, he's terrifying. These are two separate things that are happening, but putting the eclipse in his eyes and tying him to this trauma, I just can't. I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. It's masterful. This is why I'm always saying fucking Mike Flanagan for president. It's just so thoughtful.
I love the leap from, man, he makes amazing horror films. He should run
He
the
should
country.
run our country. He's so thoughtful.
Yes.
Can you imagine the speeches?
Oh, they'd be poignant.
You know, it's a monologue. He's the
Oh,
king.
shit, yes.
He's the king of
all
the
right,
monologue.
all right, I'm voting for Mike
Fucking
Flanagan.
vote for Mike Flanagan.
Write him in.
But I mean, all that to say, on a scale from 1 to 10, eternal total eclipses, I'm going to blow everyone's tits off when I say that I'm giving Gerald's Game 10 out of 10 eternal total eclipses. This film is very dark and very sad and very hard to watch at a lot of parts, but it is so special to me because, again, all the references, the empowerment of this character who we see go through just the worst things imaginable. It's very special, and I love it so much.
I think that is one thing to consider as well, because there is, like, the majority of the film, she is fucking miserable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And in peril like you wouldn't believe. But I think that is the message to leave you with, is an empowering one.
Yeah. and her telling her younger self, you're the one that matters. You're the only one that matters. That's why I'm writing this letter to you. It's like, God, like to hide away that part of her for this whole time. And now, you know, confronting it, embracing it, shining a light on it, and moving forward. She's my hero, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's amazing. It's an amazing film. I will say it's probably not for everyone because of the subject matter.
Yes.
But if you can watch it, I highly, highly recommend it because while a lot of it is horrible and gruesome, a lot of it is really thoughtful and beautiful. But I will now open up the floor to you.
I really like this movie. I was surprised how much I like this movie because there is some heavy shit in here, but it's just done so good. And then, like we spoke earlier about it being in one location. So you have to keep us in the movie in this one location the whole time. And it was pulled off great.
Yeah.
And I can't even sit here and be like, but you know, this and that. Like, yeah, maybe I can find something to complain about, but really I don't feel like it's worth it because everything I felt like was done for a reason, and it was done, I don't want to say respectfully because I don't know the book, but from how well and how much your sister talks about it and loves it, I mean, you can see it there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The care he took with writing things and thinking through how things are going to come out. And then you know, telling us about how the scenes he took out, he's like, nah, you know what? That doesn't fit there anymore. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
To have the know-how to do that and
the wisdom.
Right. And again, it goes back to just the one room. We're in this single location for a large majority of the movie. So, I mean, it is good. It is a bit heavy. And as a father of daughters, it makes me very angry seeing shit like this. So it is a bit heavy, but I can't deny how good the movie is. Everybody gives it their all. And I know it's a small cast, but it's fantastic. So for me, on a scale from 1 to 10, eternal total eclipses, I'm going to give Gerald's Game an 8. I did like the movie a lot. But like I said, and I've stated before, real world stuff, real heavy shit that like I don't want to be reminded of shit that's going on. You know what I mean? It just makes me angry.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
For me, I think that I'm just impressed by it every single time, just how masterful everything comes together.
Yeah.
The themes that they're portraying here and the message that you come away from it with are just incredibly done. Everything is handled with a lot of care. It is a very difficult balance to deal with this kind of subject matter.
Yeah.
And I feel like Flanagan really, really was careful and cared about how everything was done.
Oh, yeah.
And I very much appreciate that. And not just behind the scenes, but the way that it shows on the screen.
Yeah.
Because it is very heavy and it is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But just to speak very quickly on the positives, I've already mentioned the performances. The story of it itself is incredibly well written. The writing, what I can attribute to King, what I can attribute to Flanagan, I personally am not sure.
Yeah.
But those monologues from basically everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Bruce Greenwood scared the hell out of me. I'm going to be afraid to go to sleep tonight.
Yes.
But Carla Gugino is a fucking superstar. Just brilliant performance of her playing Jessie and Jessie 2.
Electric
Boogaloo. That was just great work. And it's the thing of the differences between the two of them. Jessie 2 is so certain and confident.
Yep.
And Jessie is fucking going through the worst thing ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you feel the difference. It's a very nuanced performance on both sides. Obviously, I have to call out the camera work. It's fantastic. Have to call out the music.
Yeah.
Great work from the Newton brothers as always. The makeup effects, look, man. That degloving scene is one of the worst goddamn things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I can't.
And it doesn't, we digest a lot of horror not just as part of the show, just for fun.
Yeah. For funsies.
Just for funsies. But it takes a lot for me to turn away.
Yeah.
And there were times I'm like, I don't know how much more I can take of this.
Yeah.
It's maybe I just have a thing about hands.
It's awful.
But I can't even put into words how great that is. But I think the only negative, I really can't really think of one, you know? The only thing that I will say, I understand that the ending is a little jarring.
Mm-hmm.
It works in a lot of ways because of how much we want Jessie to be okay.
And how much she deserves it.
And how much she deserves to. And so that works on that front, but it is like when we've been so isolated in this basically one location thing, and then we're like, we're going to end it with a lot of narration. It's like, all right, I mean, that's one way to go, but it's good to see.
Yeah.
So it's not even a full negative.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, I mean, if that's how it goes in the book, he's being faithful.
Yeah.
He's being faithful, and we all know King and his endings are they're hit or miss. The fucking I'll never get over Needful
I
Things
knew
too.
you were going to say that.
I'm
Let
telling
it go.
you right now, I spent
Let it
never mind.
go.
Yeah, that was CK. That was Cocaine King.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
Sorry. And the other only thing is that I don't have that connection to the novel because I never read it, and I don't have that pull of nostalgia or anything for this. It's very new. I feel like the score will go up as I continue to experience this film, appreciate it more, and see different things about it. But for me, on a scale of 1 to 10, eternal total eclipses, I am going to give Gerald's Game 9 eternal total eclipses out of 10.
Hey.
Because I do very much appreciate this movie, and I will be watching it again. Maybe not all of the hand bark.
Are you the dog?
No. The problem is I was going to say at the end, I was going to say, I hope people appreciate all the dog jokes. And I started thinking about the dog, and I said bark. I'm so sorry. Dude, this is late. It's late.
It's too late.
It is late. So good bark, everyone.
Well, that's all from us at Podmortem. What would you rate Gerald's Game, and what should we watch next? Let us know on Twitter at the Podmortem. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook. Be sure to follow each of us on Twitter at Blood and Smoke, at RealStreeter84, and at TravisMWH. Please consider pledging to our Patreon and stay tuned until after the music for a special shout out to our Wendigo Getter patrons. And remember, in a world where the people who are supposed to protect us can be scarier than what we're being protected from, the one voice you should be sure to never ignore is your own. Until next time. Thank you for staying tuned for a special thank you to our Wendigo Getter patrons.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah. All right.
Bark.
I was going to say a special bark too. A special thank you to
Chris Ontiveros, Kristen Lofton, Megan Martinez, Kimberly Bass, Sophie Hodson, Anthony Jerome M., Jordan Nash, Kent Morton, Lala Thomas, Travis and Nisa Hunter, Miguel Myers ATX, Jennifer Perez, Allison O'Neill, Carissa, TJ and Angie Bronson, Gabrielle Trevino, Spooky Mom, Andy Teague, Applin Ontiveros, Karima Rhodes, Antonio Huerta, Kimberly Kleindienst, Will Brown, Sydney Smith, Osvaldo Soto, Jonathan, Bobby Holmes, Donna Eason, JD Rizak, Molly Gerhart, Armand Spasto, Aaron Aguirre, Eggy, Brittany Ramatar, Charity Oxner, Amanda Six, Mandy Rainwater, Eden, Jordan Roberts, Dylan,
Melissa Sierra, Holly Bryan, Jordan Blevins, Liz Heath, Spencer Montalvo, Pancake the Panda, John Ramos, Michael Newting, Alexis Roberts, Dan Laveau, Itzy M., Gary Horton, Leisha Olivier, Kate Lamp, Carlos and Sydney, Jessica Hunter, Helena Rudder, Alan Johnston, Mariah, Livy Fun, Mandy M., Scott Troutman Wise, Towton Watson, Mozzie Bear, Brittany G., Dave Burke, Adrian Stakes, Daniel McGinnis, Nick Spill, Emma Hagel Kissinger, Valerie G., Emiliana, Brian Glass, CB, Maya Noches, Taylor Santana, Will Lewison, Angelique, Smelly Poo Poo Head, Beth Bauer,
Ben Coons, Cookie, Esperanza J, Jason Kyle OKC, Joshua Rumley, Danielle Peralta, Hannah R, Brandon, Nicholas Carter, Sawyer Reese Farr, Dr. Diva Loves Horror, Girl That's Scary, M. Fryback, Cassandra, Andrea Simmons, Ashley Higuera, William Rush, Katarina, Ryan Brom, Megan Ochoa, Laura Lassiter, Natalie de Guzman, Eileen O, Morgan Freenomorph, Marissa E, Sydney, Henry F, Carlos J. Mota, Megan M, Strangely Sarah, Paul Jordan, Christy Beck, Nancy and Andy, Amanda Lopez, Cody Graves, Andy Terrell, Gage, and Wizard Boner.
That's one name, huh? What? I don't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was like, how do we end these again? We've all been.
Okay, so I wrote this before what you said earlier, but
Okay.
we love you like a hungry dog loves Kobe beef.
Hey,
Right.
very good.
Bark.
Bark you all very much. We can't bark you enough.
Until next bark. Until next time.